Chapter 1550. Although everyone was mentally prepared for the losses. After all, if the losses were not too great, Elder Life Lamp would not have been alerted, and Taoist would not have sent hundreds of peak God Emperors to rescue his disciples. However, after hearing the Internal Affairs Elder statistics, everyone still found it hard to accept. After all, these are the foundation and future of the Tao Will sect. Not to mention the outer sect disciples. The inner sect disciples and true disciples were all peak God Emperor's reserves. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan and the others were fine. Otherwise, the losses would be too great. Even so, the number of outer sanctum, inner sanctum, true disciples, deacons, and elders had already reached several thousand. Even a force like the Tao Will sect would not be able to bear such losses. Moreover, the losses this time were few in the history of the Tao Will sect. Even when the Tao Will sect's patriarch died, their losses were not this great. The reason was not that the degree of danger this time was higher than the previous time, but the direction of the losses was different. The previous time, the Tao Will sect's losses were concentrated in their sphere of influence and various cultivation resources. There were not many casualties. However, this time was different. The losses were all people. If they kept the land, they would lose the land. If they kept the people, they would lose the land, but they would gain the land. No matter when or where, talents were the rarest. Many clans and sects' resurgence was due to the rise of a powerful genius. Putting this aside, they had already accepted the losses because they were already mentally prepared. What really angered the Tao Will sect's elders was the mastermind behind Wu Yue's report. Almost all the forces around the Tao Will sect had made a move, and many of them were on good terms with the Tao Will sect. Sure enough, there were no eternal friends or enemies, only eternal interests. In fact, if that was the case, it would be fine. The Tao Will sect could understand that everything in the world was for interests. After all, if other forces were to rise, they might also play some tricks. What angered them the most was that some of the smaller forces that were attached to them had betrayed them and taken advantage of the situation. This was simply unforgivable. Usually, they followed their lead and thought that they were good people. Now that there was a problem, they could see who was loyal and who was treacherous. After everyone vented their anger, Taoist, he softly snorted, and everyone instantly quieted down. Tell me, what should my Tao Will sect do next? Should we take revenge or exercise forbearance? As soon as these words were spoken, the Tao inside hall that had just calmed down instantly became clamorous once more. Needless to say, of course, we'll take revenge if there's a grudge, and take revenge if there's a grievance. That's right. If we give in, what if something like this happens again? If we don't retreat now, we will retreat step by step. Letting them go will only make them more unbridled. Yes, kill. I can't tolerate this kind of thing. If I don't kill him and turn the world upside down, I'll die of grievance. These words are deeply in my heart. I don't care about the others, but we definitely can't let those traitors go. If we don't pay a heavy price and everyone imitates them, the country won't be a country. No, we can't act rashly. Yeah, it wasn't just one or two powers that made a move this time. Some of them aren't the slightest bit weaker than our Tao Will school, and they might even be more formidable. Once they take revenge, how will we be able to deal with it? That's right. This is like poking a hornet's nest. We should be cautious. That's right. Revenge is a dish best served cold. That's right. Revenge might feel good for a while, but what about the aftermath? We can't ignore the big picture just because of a moment of anger. For a time, everyone in the Tao inside hall was divided into two groups, and everyone held their own opinions. Fortunately, it didn't fight. One side believed that this kind of thing couldn't be tolerated. As the saying goes, revenge cannot be delayed overnight. If they didn't fiercely counterattack, it would probably encourage the arrogance of the person in the dark and make it worse. If he didn't take a step back, the situation would become even more uncontrollable. Therefore, regardless of whether it was out of his own conscience, to vent the hatred in his heart, or for the sake of the overall situation, to kill the chicken to warn the monkey, attacking was necessary. As for the other side, they believed that things couldn't be rushed. Revenge was a dish best served cold. who wouldn't be willing to take revenge, who wouldn't feel aggrieved. However, they had to consider the consequences. The most important thing was that there were too many forces involved this time. If they went all out to take revenge, it might accidentally cause an all-out war. If it caused everyone to attack together, although the Tao Insight sect wasn't afraid, it wouldn't be worth it. They might even encounter a disaster because of it. After all, it was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. For a time, everyone said they were right. No one could convince anyone. Since that's the case, let's make a compromise. After a while, Taoist E spoke. We have to take revenge, but we can't take it all either. If we don't do it, people will look down on us, and trouble will come one after another. If we take it all, it's not a well-practiced strategy, and it's easy to get ourselves into trouble. So, what we have to do is to make up for the losses. If that's the case, and they still dare to disobey or think that the Tao Insight sect is easy to bully, then there's nothing more to say. If they want to fight, let's fight. The Tao Insight sect isn't without allies. After all, we're standing on the side of reason. Yes, sect leader. In the end, Taoist E made the final decision. The others thought about it and agreed that it was indeed the best solution at the moment. Therefore, the external affairs elder Chen Sheng led the way, the law enforcement elder Zhang Tiandi, and the Tao soldier elder Wenbin assisted them. They led a group of people and attacked the factions that they had already discovered. As for those forces that were originally affiliated to the Tao sect, they had stabbed the Tao sect in the back this time. There was nothing much to say about them. They would just take action and eliminate them completely. Other than that, the other factions were divided into two groups. If one group of people gave in and extorted a sum of money, it would be fine. If they still dared to be stubborn, then they would directly take action and eliminate them. As for the other group of people, they were the Eternal Heaven sect, the Freedom sect, and the Martial Apex sect, which were more powerful than the Tao Insight sect. This was also what Taoist he meant by taking the small and making up for the losses. As for those major factions, if they really went against them, it would not be easy to collect them. If they were not careful, they might accidentally fire, and the subsequent events would be out of control. If the Tao Insight sect treated them as if they did not exist, they would have taken a step back. Naturally, they would not dare to provoke the Tao Insight sect too much. This way, not only would they resolve the conflict between them, but they would also be able to deal with the smaller factions more easily. Although the smaller factions had many people, they were like a plate of loose sand without a backbone. When faced with the Tao Insight sect, they naturally knew to give in. Those who did not know that did not need to exist. Chapter 1551. To those who betrayed them, they were to be ruthless as a warning. To the others, they were to be treated differently. Those who were strong were to be ignored. It was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. To those who were weak or weaker than them, they were to be courteous before resorting to force. Those who were smart would use money to buy their lives as compensation, and those who were disobedient would be eliminated. This way, they would not only save face, but also receive compensation. Although there were still some losses, it was already the best outcome for now. After all, the Tao sect's strength was not enough to settle everything one by one, and for the sake of the bigger picture, they could not do that. After the discussion was over, after the losses and revenge, it was time to deal with the aftermath. This so-called aftermath referred to the aftermath of the sect's internal affairs. Taoist E continued. As for those disciples who have sacrificed themselves, and those who have relatives and friends, give them compensation. It could be in the form of resources or quotas. As for those who have not sacrificed themselves, we still have to support them. Moreover, we have to support them vigorously. Relax and reduce the scope of exchange and Tao insight points so that they can recover and improve their cultivation faster. There are only two reasons why this happened this time. One is that we are not strong enough, and the other is that our strength has grown too fast. Because they were not strong, anyone would dare to step on them. Similarly, even if they were in the right, even if they were at a disadvantage, they would not dare to act recklessly. Their strength grew too fast, putting too much pressure on them. That was why they wanted to suppress it. If we were strong enough and grew so fast that they could not react, this would not have happened. Therefore, we need to grow faster while they think that we're licking our wounds. This will also make up for the losses this time. Hearing Taoist Yi's words, everyone nodded. Since they could not take revenge completely, and since they did not want to see them grow too fast, they would do their best to do so. On one hand, they could quickly increase their strength, and on the other hand, it was also a means of revenge. It was precisely because of this that Fang Qingshan received compensation from a sect. Otherwise, the sect has already done its best to heal your injuries. How could it still compensate you just because you haven't fully recovered, but it's no longer a big deal? They just wanted the disciples to grow faster. For a time, the bountiful treasure pavilion, the secret storehouse, all kinds of grotto heavens, and even a level 4 treasures on the Tao, while ranking were open to these elites and seed disciples. Among them, the place that tempted Fang Qingshan the most was the core area of the Tao sect. In other words, in the sea of karmic luck and virtue, in the Tao ranking a 4th grade treasure. After all, during the intercourt competition that day, merely the enhancement of karmic luck Tao insight had caused Fang Qingshan to feel as if he'd been filled with wisdom and he'd obtained great benefits. Even though it couldn't compare to the eternal blessing, it was only a slight boost. If one was able to enter the Tao insight rankings to cultivate, one didn't need to think to know that the effects would be great. But if one wanted to enter it, then even if the sect was merciful, placed emphasis on fostering, open up the passageway, and intentionally reduce the Tao insight consumed once, the Tao insight consumed was still not small. After all, it was a place that even ordinary peak God Emperors could not enter. Fortunately, for Fang Qingshan, he had just received a large amount of resources. With the subsidies from the sect, coupled with the favorable policies, and a portion of his own contribution, it should be enough. Pangbo and the others had the support of their clans and masters, but even though Fang Qingshan didn't, he'd just obtained the entire wealth of a late-stage God Emperor and a peak God Emperor not long ago. So, there were some things that he couldn't use, but he could exchange them for Tao insight points. So, at this moment, Fang Qingshan was organizing his gains so that he could exchange them for Tao insight points, and then head to the Tao insight rankings to cultivate. Fang Qingshan's main gains this time were divided into 3 areas. The first was his original destination, the Fallen Dragon's secret realm. Unfortunately, because their battle was too intense, besides the few scattered resources they'd gathered at the beginning, the only gains from the Fallen Dragon's secret realm were the destruction quintessence energy they devoured after the River of Destruction appeared, and the last days that was born from a large portion of the destruction quintessence energy. Even though there weren't many things, merely the last days I was outstanding. It was also Fang Qingshan's greatest gain. Moreover, the grade of this treasure just happened to be suitable to fuse into the timeless Arkansas. Once this treasure was fused into the timeless arc, not only would it speed up the restoration of the timeless arc, but would also speed up the advancement of the timeless Arkansas. Besides the gains from the Fallen Dragon's secret realm, the other part was the 3 great commanders. This was the least of the 3. After all, their cultivations were only at the early stage of the Divine Emperor realm. Originally, the 8 treasures Ru E umbrella was fine, but unfortunately, it was taken away by Zhuge Jin in the end. However, putting aside the fact that Fang Qingshan's taking it away would easily infuriate the 3 treasures Divine Emperor, just the fact that the 3 treasures Divine Emperor had come all the way here to rescue them. Shouldn't he be compensated for his hard work? So, even though he was envious, Fang Qingshan didn't feel the slightest bit displeased. If others knew that a mere peak immortal like Fang Qingshan actually looked down on the possessions of a Divine Emperor, who knew if they'd spit out blood. The last part belonged to Duan Wei and Chang Lushui. Apart from obtaining their respective cultivation techniques, the most important things were concentrated in 2 areas. The most important thing was still concentrated in 2 aspects. One was the harvest of spirit treasures, and the other was the harvest of money and other resources. Among the spiritual treasures, Duan Wei only had 2 medium LV3 treasures and 2 low LV3 3 supreme treasures. As for Chang Lushui, apart from a top LV3 sword, he also had an upper LV3 wooden fish, 3 medium LV3 treasures, and 1 low LV3 supreme treasure. Originally, he had a wormhole pearl, but unfortunately, he had already used it. As for money, he had obtained the void coin, which was used in the entire boundless void. It was a bit similar to Fang Qingshan's eternal coin and divine coin. As for the other miscellaneous things, they weren't precious, but their overall value was not low. In short, this time, Fang Qingshan had basically achieved his goal of coming out. He had 3 reasons for going out this time. First, he wanted to go to the Tidal Tower again. Challenging the Tidal Tower not only allowed him to fight with various elites and increase his experience, but it was also a kind of cultivation, and he could also obtain the blessing of the luck of the boundless void. Unfortunately, this goal had been foiled. At this time, although the forces behind the scenes had stopped, it was better to be safe than sorry. Moreover, Fang Qingshan hadn't fully recovered from his injuries, so he could only give up. Second, he wanted to upgrade the Timeless Arkansas. Third, he wanted to find more level 3 Divine Emperor Dao books. The third goal, with the Dao will sex compensation, was basically completed. As for the Timeless Ark's upgrade, it actually depended on the Eternal Divine Furnace units. As long as he collected 6 more Eternal Divine Furnace units, the Timeless Ark will be able to upgrade to the Immortal Realm. This was also because Fang Qingshan was constantly improving. Otherwise, he would have already upgraded. Chapter 1552. A horse is not fat without grass at night, and a man is not rich without a windfall. This time, although Fang Qingshan took a huge risk and almost didn't make it back, he was still able to make it out alive. However, the rewards were also huge. Moreover, it was unprecedented. Of course, the 3 top-notch level 3 treasures in the Dao will sect's secret vault did not count, because that was just a reward from the sect. Speaking of which, if Fang Qingshan was willing to upgrade the Eternal Heavenly Ship's grade as quickly as possible, even if it didn't reach the Eternal rank, it could reach the Immortal rank or even the Eternal rank. After all, generally speaking, an Eternal Divine Furnace unit below the Supremacy level only needed to be integrated with a Primordial Numinous treasure. As for the Supremacy level, it only needed to be integrated with a Primordial Cardinal treasure. Good heavens, when Fang Qingshan was below the Supreme Being realm, he had already fused with innate Supreme treasures and even broken Chaos spiritual artifacts. When it was at the Supreme level, it had even fused Chaos spiritual treasures with it, and even God Emperor grade Supreme treasures. It would have been one thing if that had been the case. However, in order to strive for perfection, not only did each and every artifact have to be of a high grade, it also had to have a unique effect. For example, the Treasurefall coin of the past not only possessed extraordinary effects and was capable of dropping anything, but was also the mother coin of the body coin. The red Karmic Fire Lotus had unparalleled defense, and the Karmic Fire attacks were even more mysterious. In certain special situations, it was unstoppable. Because of this, the Timeless Ark's advancement was slow. Now, Fang Qingshan was about to break through to the God Emperor realm, but the Timeless Ark hadn't even reached the peak of the Supreme Master realm. Of course, if Fang Qingshan lowered his requirements, then the Timeless Ark wouldn't be able to evolve. It wouldn't be able to fight an Immortal or even a God Emperor as a paragon. 1 peck, 1 drink, 1 gain, 1 loss, everything was predetermined. On the whole, although it was much slower and more difficult, it didn't drag Fang Qingshan down. In fact, the final result was good. However, the difficulty of advancing and the slow speed would be greatly improved this time around. After all, Fang Qingshan had obtained a huge amount of precious treasures this time. Besides the Last Day's Eye, he'd obtained over 10 grade 3 precious treasures from Chang Lushui, Duan Wei, and the 3 commanders. Although the quality of these treasures varied, with the highest being level 3 peak and the lowest being level 3 elementary. Most importantly, there wasn't a single precious treasure whose quality could be compared to the Eye of the Last Days. Even the top-grade rank 3 treasure sword in Chang Lu's possession was the same. However, this did not mean that they were defective. After all, although level 3 treasures were the standard for God Emperors, they were not as powerful as God Emperors. However, many God Emperors didn't even equip level 3 Supreme Treasures. They were still using level 2 Supreme Treasures, although they were just new God Emperors. But even for veteran God Emperors, there weren't many who could use upper LV3 weapons. Therefore, Fang Qingshan had 1 top-grade LV3 treasure, 1 high-grade LV3 treasure, 6 middle-grade LV3 treasures, and 5 low-grade LV3 treasures. Of course, Fang Qingshan didn't think much of them, and he wouldn't use them to fuse with the Timeless Arkansas. However, he could let Mosquito down and devour them or use them for transactions. Not to mention the Dao Will Sec's Bountiful Treasure Pavilion and even the Secret Vault. There were also many fortuitous encounters among the disciples. Therefore, Fang Qingshan was very confident that he would be able to gather all the eternal units he needed. After all, the Supreme Timeless Arc only had 7 eternal divine furnace units. Now that the hibernation pearl had been fused with it, and the last days I had been reserved for a spot, there were only 5 empty spots left. Fang Qingshan currently had 1 top-grade LV3, 1 high LV3, and 6 medium LV3, and 5 low LV3. That was a total of 13 Supreme Treasures. It shouldn't be too much of a problem for him to exchange for 5 medium LV3 Supreme Treasures. Moreover, he had already chosen 3 top-grade LV3 treasures from the Dao Will Sec's Secret Vault. Therefore, after the Timeless Arc advanced to the Immortal Realm, it would be able to advance to the Ancient Realm at the fastest speed possible. As for the Eternal Realm after that, it wasn't something that Fang Qingshan could reach at the moment. After all, according to his current fusion method, he would need to fuse at least a level 4 Supreme Treasure when he reached the Eternal Realm. Level 4 Supreme Treasures were first-class treasures no matter where they were placed, and they could suppress a force. Thinking about it, the Dao Will Sect only had 2 level 4 Supreme Treasures on the surface. As for the Timeless Arc, even if it didn't mutate, there would still be 3 empty spots. Just thinking about it made his scalp go numb. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan was also open-minded, and he only thought about this troublesome matter for a while before throwing it to the back of his mind. He would think about it after he advanced to the Eternal Realm. The Bountiful Treasures Pavilion. After sorting out his harvest, Fang Qingshan came here again without hesitation. This time, he didn't want to go to the Secret Vault through the Bountiful Treasures Pavilion. The Secret Vault was also open, and people were allowed to exchange for it. But this time, Fang Qingshan didn't lock his target on the Secret Vault. After all, the value of the things in the Secret Vault was too high, and it also depended on luck. Of course, the main purpose of coming to the Bountiful Treasures Pavilion this time was to deal with a batch of treasures that he didn't need and were not too precious. From there, he could exchange for Dao meaning points and then go to the Merit Sea of Providence to cultivate in the Dao Will list. Logically speaking, Fang Qingshan had the Eternal Blessing, so there was no need for such a martial arts place at all. However, this time, Fang Qingshan's origin was injured, and he needed to use the Eternal Blessing to repair his foundation. Moreover, the list of Dao will contain all the Dao wills since the establishment of the Dao Will Sect in addition to enlightenment. If he could comprehend 1 or 2 of them, it would be of great benefit to Fang Qingshan in comprehending the Divine Emperor chapter of the All Heavens Dao verification technique, even though it wasn't as comprehensive as a Divine Emperor cultivation method. Because Fang Qingshan came to exchange for Dao meaning points this time, he didn't bother Qian Duo. However, because he exchanged for too many things, even if the 13 level 3 treasures were excluded, the value was still immeasurable. Therefore, it inevitably shocked the entire Bountiful Treasures Pavilion in the end. After all, the things that Fang Qingshan took out were mostly the possessions of 3 early-stage Divine Emperors, 1 late-stage Divine Emperor, and 1 peak-stage Divine Emperor. The ordinary deacons were directly frightened, mainly because there were too many of them, and they didn't have the authority to use so many Dao meaning points. Therefore, in the end, it was Qian Duo who was alarmed. "Ah, I was wondering who it was. So it's you, kid." Qian Duo walked out and saw Fang Qingshan right away. His tired expression relaxed a little. After all, there were many things to do recently, and the pressure alone made Qian Duo, who was a peak stage divine emperor, tired. "Good fella, you've made a fortune." Looking at the things that Fang Qingshan took out, even Qian Duo was shocked. Even with his eyesight and wealth, these things were not dispensable. Chapter 1553. A skinny camel was still bigger than a horse. After all, Chong Lu Shui and Duan Wei were both peak divine emperors and late divine emperors, and they were not rootless. Although the Thousand Autumns sect was not as powerful as the Dao sect, it was still a major force. Most importantly, it was backed by the Eternal Heaven sect. Therefore, although they were not as wealthy as the titled divine emperors, they were not to be underestimated. Even though Fang Qingshan had only taken out a part of it, it was already shocking enough. Otherwise, if it was just some ordinary things, how could it have alarmed Elder Qian Duo? Hee, it's all because of Elder Zhuge's kindness. Fang Qingshan chuckled. Oh, Qian Duo understood what he meant. These are Chong Liu Shui's assets. The reason why Qian Duo looked so haggard was because he had to deal with the aftermath. After all, everyone in the Dao sect, except for a small number of people, was alarmed by what had happened this time. They either went to help, demanded repayment, or helped Fang Qingshan and the others heal. Therefore, Qian Duo and the others knew what had happened to Fang Qingshan and the others. At the same time, he had to admire Zhuge Jin's generosity, because it was obvious that Zhuge Jin was investing in Fang Qingshan. Otherwise, even Qian Duo was surprised by just a part of the resources. Would Zhuge Jin, who was the same as him, not be interested in them? The answer was yes. However, after seeing Fang Qingshan's potential and ability, he felt that it was worth it. Not to mention the timeless arc, Fang Qingshan's performance this time showed Zhuge Jin the potential to break through to Venerable Emperor. Therefore, he was eager to invest in him. Even if Fang Qingshan could not break through to Venerable Emperor, he would definitely reach the peak Divine Emperor, like Qian Duo. Therefore, it would not be a loss no matter what. Almost. Fang Qingshan nodded. This old man is really fast. Qian Duo sighed and asked, Kid, why did you take out all these things to exchange? Although Dao wills are valuable, don't you need them for your cultivation? Looking at the pile of treasures, even though they were useless to Qian Duo, not to mention an undying, it would be beneficial to many mid and late god emperors. He couldn't understand why Fang Qingshan had taken them all out. Even though these things are precious, they aren't of much use to me. Moreover, I want to enter the Dao Insight rankings to cultivate, and I'm extremely lacking in Dao Insight points. Fang Qingshan said, I see. If it were someone else who said that, Qian Duo would spit on that person's face. He was just at the immortal realm, but he said that the resources that were useful to late god emperors were useless to him. Of course, it was different for Fang Qingshan. From Zhuge Jin, Qian Duo knew that although Fang Qingshan was just at the peak of immortal realm, when he erupted, he could have the fighting capacity of a late god emperor. Furthermore, when he heard about the Dao ranking, he came to a realization. He didn't ask any more questions and turned to the attendant beside him. Then let's calculate it quickly. Thus, dozens of attendants worked together. Even though Fang Qingshan had a lot of things, it took them 2 hours to calculate everything. Coming out of the Bountiful Treasures Pavilion, Fang Qingshan went straight to the Internal Affairs Hall. In the Dao sect, other than the sect master and vice sect master, the other elders had their own duties. For example, Elder Zhuge Jin was mainly in charge of the Dao Palace and the inheritance of the Dao sect. Elder Qian Duo of Many Treasures Pavilion was in charge of the trading and exchange of treasures. Chun Sheng, the elder in charge of foreign affairs, thought of foreign affairs and even foreign wars. And the main role of the internal affairs elder was to deal with all internal affairs, such as the distribution of Dao Insight points, merit assessment, and so on. Places like the Sword Tomb and the Blessed Land of Five Elements were also under the Internal Affairs Hall's control, especially when he wanted to enter the Merit Sea of Fate, the Tao ranking. He definitely needed the approval of the Internal Affairs Elder. This was because Taoist EE had approved the lifting of the restrictions. Otherwise, such an important place would at least need the approval of the sect master, not to mention the approval of the Internal Affairs Elder. Because of Feng Qingshan's identity, the permission of the sect leader, and the fact that Tao insight points were in place, the Internal Affairs Elder didn't delay and directly brought Feng Qingshan to the ocean of karmic luck and virtue. This place was the same as the Tao sect's secret vault that Qingshan had visited earlier. It was located in a mysterious space and time, and ordinary people would not be able to find it at all. Without fixed coordinates, even a venerable sovereign who cultivated space-time would not be able to find any clues. Following the Internal Affairs Elder Wu Yu into the Internal Affairs Hall, there was a mysterious space in the deepest part, like the Bountiful Treasures Pavilion. There was only a transmission platform and a few peak god emperors guarding it. Now that Feng Qingshan knew the way, he stood on the transmission platform without saying anything. Soon, he was dragged into the space-time by a vortex filled with countless colors. This time, it was even longer than the last time he went to the secret vault. It seemed that the Merit Sea of Fate was located in a deeper space-time. He had not noticed it before, or it could be said that the last time he was teleported, he had deliberately concealed it, so he did not think about it. This time, because the teleportation time was a little longer and the permission was lifted, Feng Qingshan saw some clues. However, the transportation tunnel was filled with countless colors that were constantly changing. It was difficult to grasp and unfathomable. It was the mighty power that belonged to space and time. It was a little similar to the wormhole that Feng Qingshan had passed through before. In fact, Feng Qingshan's guess was right. This transmission platform was not so much a transmission formation, but a wormhole. However, it was a little different from ordinary wormholes. It was more advanced, a modified space-time tunnel. Of course, if that was all, Feng Qingshan would not be surprised. What really surprised him was the secret realm where the Merit Sea of Fate and the Tao ranking were located. This seems to be the river of space-time. Feng Qingshan was no stranger to the river of space-time at all. This was because he had summoned the river of space-time more than once, and he had seen others summon it more than once. Whether it was the river of space-time, he summoned it, or saw others summon it, they were just tributaries, just shadows, and could not be compared to this place at all. But it was still the river of space-time. Is the Tao ranking in the river of space-time? Feng Qingshan thought with some surprise, but on second thought, he felt that it was reasonable. After all, in the entire infinite void and the myriad realms, apart from a limited number of dangerous places, only places like the origin of the heavens and the river of space-time could hide from the eyes of venerable sovereigns and primordial spirits. Moreover, although the river of space-time was dangerous, there were also great benefits. Chapter 1554. As the saying went, seeking riches amidst danger. This was a well-known saying. The more dangerous a place was, the more good things there would be. First of all, since it was dangerous, there would definitely be something that could pose a great threat, be it a beast or a natural disaster. Regardless of whether it was a beast or a natural disaster, these things could be turned into resources. There were no useless resources, only resources that could not be used. Moreover, the more dangerous a place was, the fewer people would go. As the saying went, there was not enough meat when there were too many people. No matter how many things there would not be enough to go around. Naturally, there would be more things when there were fewer people. However, the river of space-time was a little different. It was not the degree of danger, but the resources. The resources here seemed inexhaustible. Although there were countless people going forward to collect resources at every moment, day after day, year after year, the resources in the river of space-time did not seem to decrease at all. Speaking of which, the simplest thing about the river of space-time was that comprehending the space-time Tao here was like a fish in water. In all the realms, if those who cultivated the space-time Tao did not come to the river of space-time, they would have lived in vain. Every year, at every moment, there would be people who cultivated the space-time Tao coming here on a pilgrimage. Moreover, in all the realms, 8 out of 10 venerable emperors who had proven their space-time Tao had done so through the river of space-time. Similarly, the river of space-time was also a treasure land that produced all kinds of space-time treasures. There were even some non-space-time treasures. It would be fine if there were only space-time treasures, but the key was the non-space-time treasures. The entire river of space-time was like a treasure bowl. Moreover, many treasures did not exist in all the realms. How could people not be suspicious? In addition, there was a legend that one could reach the primordial origin lands by going upstream in the river of space-time. Although this last rumor made people shrink back because of the many venerable emperors' blood, nevertheless, no one had ever given up. Therefore, as long as one had the ability to explore the river of space-time, they would build a stronghold here. Moreover, the space-time in the river of space-time was chaotic, so it was very hidden. Here, even if one met another and saw them with their own eyes, they might end up in a different space-time once they crossed over. Therefore, many powerful rogue cultivators would also build their residences here. Some of them had fled here for their lives. Some of them had secluded themselves here. Some of them, there were so many of them. In any case, when he passed away in meditation, these cave abodes would become the fortuitous encounters of others. Therefore, the river of space-time was also a land of treasures. No one knew how many people had built secret bases here, or how many people had fallen here, ever since the establishment of the myriad heavens and realms. In any case, there were people coming here all the time. Some people went in and came out, and some people went in and never came out again. And these were all indescribable treasures, because there was no lack of venerable sovereigns among them, and even the weakest among them was a middle or late-stage divine emperor, because those with low cultivations were not qualified to enter at all. As long as one was able to obtain their inheritance, it would be extremely beneficial. Fang Qingshan clearly didn't have the right to enter the river of space-time. Although his current combat strength seemed to have reached the late-stage divine emperor, it didn't last long, and he had only just touched the threshold. If he dared to enter, he would probably be turned into ashes in a short time. Therefore, he was very curious about the river of space-time at this moment, and was about to look around. "Brat, are you coming in or not?" Just as Fang Qingshan was looking around, a slightly impatient voice rang out. It sounded young, old, and somewhat impatient. Then, a boy appeared in front of Fang Qingshan without any warning. He looked like an 11 or 12-year-old child, wearing a light yellow short shirt with a golden ring around his neck and a pair of white and tender feet. He looked like a virtuous boy in front of Guanyin Bodhisattva. Fang Qingshan was so scared that he kept stepping back and almost struck him with his palm. "You are?" Fang Qingshan asked warily. "What do you think?" The boy asked unhappily. "I gave you a great benefit last time. Have you forgotten about it so quickly?" "So it's the old ancestor. Greetings, old ancestor." Fang Qingshan came to a sudden realization and hurriedly bowed. "When are you going to enter the Tao world?" the boy asked. He seemed to be resting and yawning like the old man in front of Zhai Xinglu. He didn't want to be polite with Fang Qingshan at all and asked directly. "Now." Fang Qingshan's eyes flashed, and he answered without hesitation. The Tao world could be filled with the comprehension of all the powerful figures since the establishment of the Tao sect. Directly entering the center of the world to comprehend the origin of Tao was equivalent to comprehending all the mysteries of these great figures' cultivation methods at the closest distance without any barriers. It was completely exposed in front of him and exposed to his senses. This kind of comprehension efficiency was at least 1,000 times. Not to mention helping people to comprehend and cultivate, the Tao wills were simply divine emperor-level cultivation methods. After all, their Tao wills were also cultivated through the cultivation methods in the Tao Palace. Just this alone was enough to make Fang Qingshan excited. Therefore, Entering the center of the world to comprehend the origin of Tao Will was definitely an unimaginable opportunity. This kind of opportunity could be said to be a great opportunity, and even ordinary peak divine emperors would not have such an opportunity. Firstly, opening it up too much would cause great damage to the list of Tao Will. Moreover, the consumption of one's energy to enter it once wasn't just an ordinary amount. Even peak stage divine emperors would find it a little hard to bear. This time, although Fang Qingshan made a huge profit, the consumption of entering it was so great that it made him want to vomit blood. He had used Chang Lu Shui and the others' items that were not the most precious items that he could use to trade, but the Tao insight points that he obtained could only allow him to comprehend here for 10 days to half a month. This was even with the Tao insight sex policy support. The results could be seen from this. If that's the case, then let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Qingshan felt the world spin, and in an instant he disappeared. At this moment, Fang Qingshan appeared in a place that was filled with dreamlike colors. The colors were constantly changing. 12 colors, 9 colors, 7 colors, 5 colors, all sorts of different colors. It was unimaginably complex and varied, strange and dazzling. Blades, spears, swords, halberds, axes, hooks, forks, flowers, trees, the sun, moon, stars, rivers, lakes, wind, rain, thunder, lightning, heaven, hell, beasts, and humans. There was everything that one could think of, and it was ever-changing. This place felt like a complete, yet illusory world, filled with a surreal feeling. With a glance, one could see the constantly changing colors. Sometimes it was like clouds floating by. Sometimes it was like a winding ribbon. Sometimes it was like flowing water, and sometimes it was like a gentle breeze. Not only were the colors changing, but even the forms were constantly changing. It was simply a myriad of phenomena. Chapter 1555. As he looked, Fang Qingshan's eyes became dazzled. After a while, he felt dizzy. Sure enough, although it's good, it's not so easy to get it. The entire world of Tao was filled with Tao will. Wherever one looked, every move one made, and even breathing was filled with Tao will. But it wasn't so easy to truly comprehend it. It was like taking a treasure from Zhaixing. Lu, Tao, couldn't be passed on easily. Even if one had already entered, even if one had given Tao intent value, it was just a ticket to enter. If one really wanted to gain something, it would depend on one's next choice. The world of Tao intent was strange and dazzling, like a kaleidoscope. Countless colors flashed in front of one's eyes, and countless rays of light surrounded one's body. Fang Qingshan's mouth watered. The weakest Tao intent was the kind that a late-stage God Emperor had comprehended for a lifetime. Most of them were Tao intent comprehended by experts like Zhuge Jin and Qian Duoduo. The most powerful was naturally the Tao intent that the Tao intent sex ancestor comprehended. It was like a white jade pillar that supported the sea and the purple gold pillar. Next were Tao intents at the level of Elder Tan and Taoist Yi, half-step Emperor Venerable. From yin and yang, to the 5 elements, to all things in the world, to the myriad races, to the various forms of life. Some were active, some were static, some were dead, some were alive, some were unparalleled in killing, some were invincible in defense, and some were, in any case, there were only things that one couldn't think of. For a moment, Fang Qingshan was dazzled by the selection. There were too many good things, and he felt like he didn't know where to start. It seemed that this was good, that was good, as if he wanted to have everything. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan was still rational and didn't want to take everything in one fell swoop. The main thing was that even if he wanted to, he didn't have enough time. After all, his Tao intent value could only support him to stay here for 10 days or half a month at most. Once the time was up, he would be kicked out. Although Liang Yuan was good, it wasn't a place to stay for long. Fang Qingshan knew that he needed to make a choice. The mysteries of the world were endless, but human cultivation couldn't be like that. If he didn't make a choice, he would be too greedy and want this and that. In the end, he would achieve nothing. After all, there were simply too many mysteries in the world, and they were innumerable. Moreover, all roads lead to Rome, and each road was incomparably profound. Even though Fong Qingshan's talent was amazing, his comprehension ability was outstanding, and he had many auxiliary methods, it was still impossible for him to comprehend all the mysteries. Not to mention Fong Qingshan, no one could do this, not even divine emperors, venerable sovereigns, or even more powerful ones. Only a supreme eternal being could do this. Otherwise, he could only make a choice and choose the most useful comprehension for himself. It was just like Hongjun Tiandao. He seemed to know all 3,000 great Daos, but in reality, he was not proficient in every Dao. Instead, he used Hongjun Tiandao to rule over all Daos. As he looked at the dim and dim, yet colorful Dao insight before him, and sensed the myriad of indescribable profundities, even though Fong Qingshan was reluctant in his heart, he could only forcefully endure it. Only when you're willing to part with something can you gain something. It didn't matter how much you gained. It was how much you let go of that was the most exciting thing. As such, as he thought about it, the originally dreamy colors and elusive visions seemed to become clear. Forget it. What suits me the most is the best. Even though Fong Qingshan coveted the powerful Dao aura contained in the great Dao insight, first of all, those things might not suit him. If he forced himself to comprehend them, it would not be worth it. Most importantly, this place was not free. Every minute and every second was money. Fong Qingshan took out the Dao value that Chang Lu Shui and Duan Wei exchanged for. Even if the sect gave him a discount, he could only stay here for half a month. His time was limited. Therefore, Fong Qingshan closed his eyes, thinking carefully and sensing carefully. Then, he discovered that countless colors were constantly changing, and countless shapes were also constantly changing. One would never know what color or shape they would be in the next breath. It was unpredictable and ever-changing. Good heavens, the Dao insight here was similar to the spiritual treasures in the secret vault. As the saying went, Dao could not be passed down easily. Things that were easily obtained were often not that valuable. Therefore, there were only two ways to comprehend Dao insight here. The first was to guide the Dao insight that was fated with one. For example, if one cultivated the 5 elemental laws, then one would guide the 5 elemental laws of yin and yang, as well as the Dao insights derived from them. If one cultivated the reincarnation laws, then one would guide the Dao insights of reincarnation, life and death, time and space. Otherwise, one could only rely on one's strength to capture them. If it was in the secret storehouse, Fong Qingshan could still rely on the restraining effect of the treasure fall coin against them and be successful in every endeavor. However, this was the will of the Dao. While the treasure fall coin wasn't completely useless, its effect wasn't great. And as the saying went, seeing is believing. But here, what one saw might not be what one wanted. Putting aside the fact that direct vision was deceptive, even the perception of one's soul might not be accurate. Fortunately, Fong Qingshan had already experienced something like this in the secret vault, so he had some experience. Looks like I can only use the old way. After giving a try, Fong Qingshan sighed softly. Then, he directly released the eternal way from his body. In an instant, Fong Qingshan seemed to have disappeared from the Dao Insight list. Following that, all the colors in the surroundings and all the changes in his body disappeared. Everything was gone, and only darkness shrouded him. It was like the darkness in the void of the universe, lonely for 10,000 years. No one knew how much time had passed. Perhaps it was a moment, or perhaps it was eternity. A flash of green light suddenly appeared, burning like a star, and the light illuminated the surroundings. The flash of green light became stronger at a speed visible to the naked eye, as if it had turned into a blazing sun that illuminated the surroundings. The darkness retreated. Then, everything in the surroundings returned to normal. The only change was that a green lotus bloomed above Fong Qingshan's head. It was so beautiful, so supreme, so mesmerizing, so eternal. In the next moment, just like the spiritual treasures in the secret vault, these Dao insights also began to riot, turning into a meteor shower that pounced towards Fong Qingshan. Comprehension, After getting rid of all distracting thoughts, Fang Qingshan calmed his heart and mind, held his breath in concentration, and fell into a state where he was half awake, half asleep, and half awake. His soul was ethereal, suffused with strands of divine light, and it circulated madly as he comprehended. As soon as he comprehended, Fang Qingshan immediately felt countless profundities that directly rushed into his soul, causing him to be unable to help but tremble, and he felt that it was difficult to bear. It was too strong. This was different from comprehending Tao books. It was more direct and deeper, but it was also more difficult. Chapter 1556. Although these wills seem to be clearly displayed in front of you, and even improved your ability to comprehend. But to be honest, it was not that easy to comprehend. Those wills that could remain on the list were at least geniuses, and their cultivation was at least in the late Divine Emperor realm, and they were basically all titled Divine Emperors. Although Fang Qingshan's battle prowess had reached the late Divine Emperor realm, he had only just entered it, and his cultivation level had not kept up. If he looked at it for a long time, he would feel dizzy, and it would be difficult to digest. In fact, this was very normal. It was the same principle as when he listened to the Sword Emperor of the Storm sermon at Fuyuan Mountain. At that time, there were people who would analyze and explain for you. But once you reached a profound level and reached a place that you could not understand, it was like listening to a book from heaven. If you try to comprehend it by force, you would even suffer the backlash of the great Tao. The gains did not make up for the losses. This was because your cultivation level was not high enough and your foundation was not stable. It was like you were only at the level of a primary school student, but you were given a middle school student or even a high school student's book. Although there were examples to explain, you would still be at a loss. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan did not want to comprehend it completely. It was not possible, and it was not necessary. It was very simple because his cultivation level was not high enough, and he did not have enough time. It was not necessary because, first of all, he did not really want to comprehend these wills and cultivate their techniques. The reason why he wanted to comprehend them was that he wanted to comprehend them by analogy to extract the essence and get rid of the impurities. Then there was the problem of time. As mentioned before, Fang Qingshan could only stay here for a limited time. Therefore, what he needed to do was to memorize as many wills as possible. This was different from comprehension. It was a test of one's ability to memorize. If some great Tao could not be understood, even if one memorized it, the memory would quickly disappear after a while. But here, such a thing did not happen. As long as Fang Qingshan did not try to comprehend the way of devouring emperors with his cultivation level, he could memorize it, and it would not disappear in a short time. When he returned, he would trade for the eternal divine furnace unit, and the timeless arc would advance. With the analysis of the eternal blessing, everything would be settled. Therefore, it was not a test of his ability to comprehend, but his ability to memorize and hold. I finally recovered. That was close. While Fang Qingshan was cultivating on the Tao while ranking, the other disciples that were rescued weren't idle either. Just like Fang Qingshan, with the help of his sect and family, no matter how heavy his injuries were, he was now more or less recovered. Walking out of seclusion, he took a deep breath of the familiar and even stronger aura. He could not help but reveal an intoxicated expression. It felt good to be alive. That was close. This time, they almost lost their lives. Sure enough, the great Tao was difficult. The slightest carelessness would lead to a bottomless abyss. Although they were lucky enough to escape this time, who knew if they would follow in the footsteps of their fallen comrades the next time? Especially after learning that they had lost a disciple and a divine emperor elder this time, they were filled with a sense of urgency. Therefore, at this moment, their hearts were the same as Fang Qingshan's. They were filled with resentment towards the forces that had ambushed them, and they were determined to not give themselves the chance to do so. Otherwise, they would definitely get back at them with interest. At the same time, they were even more anxious to increase their cultivation. What backing, what background, what talent, what wealth, they were all fake. The only real thing was one's own strength. Only with strength could one have everything. Without strength, No matter how powerful a genius was, no matter how powerful his background, it was just a castle in the air, a reflection of the moon in the water. Background was only a deterrent, and geniuses were only the future. At the same time, a tree that stood out from the forest would easily attract trouble. Just like this time, people didn't care about your background, and they didn't want you to continue to grow. Therefore, danger came. Therefore, as soon as their injuries were healed, they began to cultivate crazily like Feng Qingshan. Although they didn't have a peak divine emperor and a late divine emperor like Feng Qingshan, they had their own opportunities. Moreover, many of them had masters, families, and the encouragement of the sect, so it was enough. For a time, the whole Dao sect had not yet calmed down from the cultivation frenzy caused by the inter-disciple competition. Once again, an even crazier cultivation frenzy was set off. It was like the rolling waves, each higher than the previous one. All kinds of secret realms and blessed grotto heavens came and went in an endless stream. All kinds of treasures, elixirs, and medicines were consumed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The aura of many disciples changed day by day, and from time to time, people could be seen breaking through their current realm. Blessings were accompanied by misfortunes, and misfortunes were accompanied by blessings. They were the disciples who had survived the calamity. This was a great opportunity in itself. Otherwise, the sect wouldn't have focused on cultivating them. Although their foundations hadn't been completely restored, as long as they recovered and digested this experience, they would definitely be able to soar into the sky. There can be no construction without destruction. At that time, not only could they make up for the loss of the Dao sect, it might even be possible for them to reach a higher level. This was also the reason why Taoist E and the others opened up the resources and secret realms. At the beginning of the geomagnetic core of the Tao chaotic world, Pangbo was bare-chested, constantly punching. Although each punch was crooked and unstable, this was because of the geomagnetic force. Once he got used to this force, his fist intent could be purer, and his cultivation would naturally improve. In the affiliated world of the Dao sect, Jiangshan had already become the ruler of a heavenly empire. He was fighting in all directions, and the number of people in his territory was increasing day by day. He had obtained the legacy of the great Qian imperial dynasty. If he wanted to improve, the best way was to establish a dynasty and expand his territory. Along with Jiangshan, there was another person, Zhang Xian. He cultivated the literary Dao, and other than books, the fastest way was to teach people. Therefore, Jiangshan was responsible for expanding his territory, and he was responsible for governing the universe. Both of them complemented each other. It wasn't just them. D.E., Nie Yun, Xinyuan Ziwei, Feng Tianwu, Yu Mantang, and the others were the same. In particular, Xinyuan Ziwei, Feng Tianwu, Yu Mantang, and the others were under even greater pressure. Jiang Overlord and the others were already breaking through to the God Emperor realm, and Feng Qingshan and the others were already catching up. They were stuck in the middle, and the pressure was immense. However, with pressure came motivation. As long as one could withstand the pressure, one's motivation would be greater, and one's potential would be stimulated. Naturally, one's progress would also be faster. Especially when one had sufficient resources, it would be like a blowout. Of course, the motivation didn't just come from pressure, but also from the 7 emotions and 6 desires, especially hatred. Thinking about the hatred sword technique that Chang Lushui had displayed, even Zhuge Jin was a little surprised. Chapter 1557. Once the emotions and desires of the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures were stimulated to the extreme, they would not be any weaker than existences like space-time, fate, and karma. This was the so-called 3,000 great paths, each of which could prove eternity. The only difference was that on the road to eternity, space-time represented a highway, while the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures represented an ordinary road, or even a muddy path. But no matter what the process was, the result was the same. Even if one didn't cultivate to the extreme, cultivating to a certain level would still be very powerful. In the void, there were two venerable emperors. One was the seven emotions' great emperor. With a single thought, he could make all living beings below the level of venerable emperors feel the joy of proving their path as venerable emperors, or the anger and sorrow of having their great paths severed. Even if an emperor master were to face him, if they were not careful, their emotions would easily be affected by him. Once they revealed a flaw, it would be fatal. The martial pinnacle sex Emperor Slayer Saber was famous for killing a venerable emperor. However, the number of venerable emperors who had died at the hands of the seven emotions' great emperor could not be counted with two hands. Although some did not die, their great paths had been severed. If they didn't get rid of the seven emotions' great emperor's inner demons, they would never be able to improve. The other Buddha, the six desires' great Buddha, was an eminent Buddhist monk, but he had taken a different path, proving his path as venerable emperors with the six desires. He was also very powerful. One had to know that those who cultivated in Buddhism usually had to cut off their emotions and desires and purify their hearts. The great Buddha of six desires did the exact opposite and naturally caused a huge uproar in the Buddhist sections. In fact, the Vajra Lord of the Buddhist sects came out to suppress him. However, not only could he not do anything to him, but he also took the opportunity to use the Vajra Lord to prove his Tao in one go. From the seven emotions' sovereign emperor and the Buddha of six desires, it could be seen that as long as these things were unleashed to the extreme, they would be able to unleash an unimaginably vast potential. With proper guidance, they would be able to obtain unimaginable benefits. At this moment, the inner sect true disciples who had returned alive and cultivated like crazy were all filled with hatred. To the Freedom sect, the Thousand Autumns sect, the Ancient Heaven sect, the Martial Pinnacle sect, the Joshua Hall, the Evil Palace, the Bliss Mountain, the Fire Phoenix dynasty, and to everyone who harbored ill intentions towards the Dao sect. Suppressing this energy, their potential was constantly stimulated. Their cultivation base was constantly rising, and their battle prowess was becoming increasingly tyrannical. The eyes were the windows to the soul. If one were to look into their eyes at this moment, they would discover that their gazes were like torches, as though they could pierce through the void. They burned with the eternal flames of hatred, as though they wanted to burn everything. If it wasn't for the fact that there was still a bit of lightness in their core, they might have already been possessed. Freedom sect, Thousand Autumns sect, Eternal Heaven sect, Martial Apex sect, Joshua Hall, Evil Palace, Bliss Mountain, Fire Phoenix dynasty. This was the obsession in the deepest part of their hearts, a thorn, a shadow. A gentleman's revenge was a dish best served cold. Right now, he could make use of this pressure to stimulate his potential and speed up his cultivation. Once he plucked out this thorn in his heart, he would be able to erase the shadow in his heart. It was as if they had severed their karma, and they could still advance by leaps and bounds. There were even some people who specialized in this sort of karmic severing technique. Although it was difficult, as long as one could sever their karma, they would be able to advance even further. This was similar to the cultivation path of those geniuses. Those who severed their karma would form their own karma, set it as a goal, and then continue to complete it. As for geniuses, they would be given trials and tribulations under the operation of the world for them to overcome. If they couldn't complete it, they would die. If they completed it, they would advance by leaps and bounds. Both methods led to the same destination. Putting all of this aside, in the deepest part of the world of will, there was a 12-colored cocoon standing there. There was will constantly flowing on its surface, and it would occasionally draw the nearby will into it. This was completely enveloped by will, and the person sitting inside was naturally Fong Qing Shan, who was completely immersed in it. At this moment, Fong Qing Shan really felt like he was experiencing the eternal blessing. Although the effect was much weaker, the eternal blessing not only increased one's ability to comprehend, but it was also equivalent to helping one analyze. Moreover, it would directly flow into one's consciousness. It didn't matter whether one could remember or not, as it would first be compressed into one's primordial spirit. However, the world of will was different. although it could also increase one's ability to comprehend. If one wanted to comprehend it, they still had to rely on themselves to ponder it bit by bit. It was just that this kind of pondering was clearer, because there were all kinds of mysteries that were directly and intensely placed in front of one. If one just comprehended it step by step, there was actually no problem. But the key was that there was a limit to the time to comprehend it here. If one wanted to comprehend more and didn't want to waste this opportunity, then one definitely couldn't be calm and leisurely. Therefore, after Fang Qingshan went through the initial selection and found the most suitable will for himself, he didn't completely disregard it, but he also did his best. He didn't comprehend it, but devoured these will of will. Devouring it in one gulp was exactly what he wanted, but his intention was to eat it first. It didn't matter if he didn't comprehend it now. He could slowly digest it when he returned. This was because this was the best way. After all, if a peak-level Divine Emperor came here to comprehend a will, it would take a few days, not to mention 70% or 80%, even 30% or 50%. It could be seen from this. As such, his tribulation came. It should be known that even if his battle prowess had reached the late Divine Emperor, or even the late Divine Emperor realm, he was still in existence at the bottom here. It was like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. The obvious problem was indigestion, even if he didn't try to comprehend it deeply. But in the process of devouring, the countless exquisite, profound, and pure will of will and Tao rhymes still rushed over like a flood, surging in his mud pill palace. For a moment, it made Fang Qingshan feel like his Yuan Shan was about to explode. There was too much. Although he was prepared, it was still unexpected. It was really too strong. The correct way was to stop devouring immediately, digest it first, and buffer it. But Fang Qingshan knew that wealth came from danger, and this was a rare opportunity. If he didn't take the risk, he wouldn't even have a chance to escape if he didn't have a helper like Zhuge Jin the next time he met people like Chang Lu Shui. The celestial chessboard that he used to regard as the standard was no longer so safe. It made him understand that there was no omnipotent treasure in the world. At the end of the day, it still depended on the user. No matter how good something was, it still depended on the user. It wasn't that he didn't understand this principle in the past, but the celestial chessboard had been with him since he was at his weakest, giving him the feeling that there was nothing he couldn't do. It could support, attack, defend, and escape, and that was why he had such an illusion. After this time, Chang Lu Shui gave him a head-on blow, and only then did he completely break the illusion in his heart. Therefore, this was a rare opportunity, so he naturally had to seize it. Chapter 1558. Moreover, the consumption of entering this place was too great. No wonder it wasn't opened often. It wasn't just because it was too much of a drain on the secret realm itself, but also because not many people could afford it. This was because an ordinary peak Divine Emperor would probably go bankrupt if he came here. The reason why Fang Qingshan could enter this place was because he was an ordinary peak Divine Emperor and a late Divine Emperor. It was only because he came at the right time and his talent was worthy of being nurtured by the sect. Even so, he could only stay for 10 days to half a month. It was evident from this. Therefore, although it was very dangerous and painful, Fang Qingshan didn't stop cultivating immediately. Instead, he became more aggressive and devoured more. It wasn't that he wasn't afraid of exploding, but he knew that this was a rare opportunity. If he didn't put in the effort, he wouldn't get anything in return. Only by sweating more could he avoid bleeding in times of danger. Moreover, he wasn't really reckless. Through the primordial spirit, one could see that Fang Qingshan had once again used the One Qi Sanqing, manifesting 3 clones. Mosquito Dowrin and the clone of the World Tree were also sitting cross-legged together, bearing the burden together. Just like the host body, the World Tree clone had swallowed the destruction origin of the fallen dragon's secret domain. After digesting a part of it, it had advanced rapidly. Although it couldn't catch up to the host body, it had reached the late stage of a mortal realm. Although when Taoist had missed the chance, he wasn't weak. With their help, Fang Qingshan had a chance to breathe. Of course, if that was all, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. The key was that there was a lamp rising in the middle of the 6 of them. It was a lotus lamp. It looked no different from an ordinary lamp, but just like a person, it depended on its temperament. His entire body shone with a green light, giving off a lofty aura at first glance. The wick of the palace lamp was a green lotus seed formed by countless mysterious runes. The lotus seed was crystal clear like jade, emitting an ancient Tao rhyme, endless spirituality, and an eternal aura. It was as if this lotus seed represented eternity, immortality, and supremacy. This was something the Lord of the Timeless Ark was familiar with, because this lotus seed was a replica of the eternal lotus seed. This was what Feng Qingshan visualized after observing the eternal lotus seed. Inside the lamp trough were drops of cyan light, which were full of spirituality, creation, and an indescribable Tao rhythm. Similar to the wick and the lotus seed, the drops of lamp oil were rippling like glazed crystals. The oil was drawn from Feng Qingshan's spine bit by bit. In other words, this was the eternal divine marrow that had settled in Feng Qingshan's body. After the lamp was turned on, it emitted a gentle light and began to shine. The light was gentle, but not dazzling. Moreover, the brightness was extremely high. When placed in the dark and gloomy, boundless void, it could shine as brightly as the sun in the sky. In the light, one could vaguely see a supreme green lotus blooming, surrounded by all kinds of lotuses that were more than 30 grades. Streams of purple gas gathered into clouds, sacred and extraordinary. The lamp flickered, and the green light shone. Wherever it shone, countless murmurs of sacred sound continuously drilled into the mind of the physical body. It was as if a dam that was about to burst was being repaired and strengthened. The light naturally gathered together, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a huge lotus seal with the word eternal in the brain palace. This word appeared in the brain palace, constantly rotating, and emitted endless, eternal holy light. Moreover, one could see that countless lotus petals were constantly falling from the lotus that guarded the everlasting lotus, continuously merging into Feng Qingshan's ascension and into the will that had just entered Feng Qingshan's body. As for those murmurs, although it was not clear what they meant or even what they were saying, under the influence of this celestial sound, Feng Qingshan's primordial spirit that was about to explode was instantly slowed down. All kinds of mysterious will that had crazily surged and were all suppressed, compressed, and settled in the deepest depths of his primordial spirit. The eternal heart lamp, with the diagram of the great path of the green lotus as the foundation, a lotus lamp was formed, with the eternal lotus seed as the wick, the eternal divine marrow as the lamp oil, and the heart as the lamp fire. When this lamp was lit, all internal and external demons would be suppressed. His heart would not be moved, and he would be at ease for eternity. This was an upgraded version of the diagram of the great path of the green lotus. It was a secret technique that Feng Qingshan had perfected after breaking through to the immortal realm, and it could be put to use at this moment. With the protection of this lamp, the capacity of Feng Qingshan's brain was greatly increased. Although at this moment, the will that had swarmed and was still like a tidal wave, but as soon as it entered Feng Qingshan's body, it was divided into 6 parts, divided by his main body, his 3 clones, and even Mosquito Dowrin and the World Tree clone. Then, after entering his primordial spirit, it was compressed by the eternal heart lamp. For a time, Feng Qingshan instead had even more mental energy to digest and comprehend these Tao insights. Feel carefully, feel the mysteries that were closely related to him. The will of reincarnation, the will of space-time, the will of life and death, the will of the 5 elements. For a moment, Feng Qingshan seemed to have returned to the Great Path Palace. Each strand of Tao was a cultivation technique. Compared to the Tao books in the Great Path Palace, these cultivation methods were more mysterious and profound. The reason for this was that the same cultivation method would have different changes when cultivated by different people. Some people were able to comprehend by analogy and found a different path. Some people were able to improve further and bring forth new ideas. They were even more powerful than the original creator of the cultivation method. Moreover, the Tao books were different from ordinary books. They were not just dry words, but they could only give people some enlightenment and experience. In other words, they told people how to walk and how to operate, just like a soundtrack. However, the will of the path was directly manifested. This cultivation method was cultivated from the beginning to the extreme, and it was displayed in front of people step by step. It was like a video, so it was naturally easier to comprehend. Although Fang Qingshan was working hard to devour and comprehend the will of the path, he did not immediately organize the Divine Emperor chapter of the All Heavens Path verification method. But the framework of the Divine Emperor chapter was still built bit by bit. Fang Qingshan did not care about this at all, because he knew that creating the perfect Divine Emperor chapter was not something that could be done in a short period of time. First, he needed to accumulate knowledge and study more Tao books and will of the path. Then, he could use the mysteries of the eternal blessing to do it in one go. Therefore, what he needed to do now was to devour as many will of the path as possible. At the same time, he would try to comprehend the mysteries of the will of the path when he had the time. Since he wanted to extract the essence and get rid of the impurities, he naturally had to understand it. If he could not even understand it, how could he talk about anything else? Comprehending here was obviously easier and more profound than going back. Chapter 1559. It was just that it was not an easy thing to comprehend in this place. As mentioned earlier, Fang Qingshan's level was not there yet. Even with the help of this place, it was still very slow to comprehend. Moreover, for cultivators, not to mention multitasking, it was not difficult to split thousands or even billions of minds, just like Mosquito Dorn's blood god. Even so, when it came to truly comprehending the way, these secret methods were not very useful. They were not even as effective as concentrating. Especially now, although Fang Qingshan had the eternal heart lamp to suppress him, he was still frantically devouring the will and comprehending it at the same time. Naturally, he was somewhat powerless. However, fortunately, he was strong-willed and knew that this was a rare opportunity. Moreover, he only had 10 days to half a month, so he just had to endure it. Therefore, Fang Qingshan had been gritting his teeth and holding on. As he endured the will that had been devoured into his body and seemed to be about to explode at any time, he frantically operated his primordial spirit to comprehend the mysterious way within the will. This kind of pain that seemed like he was about to break through his limits was not easy to endure at all. Time passed bit by bit. He did not know how much time had passed. In any case, to Fang Qingshan, it seemed like only a moment had passed, but it also seemed like thousands of years had passed. The moment was because he was not satisfied. He still wanted to devour more will. The thousands of years was because the extreme operation of devouring and comprehension was too painful. Every second felt like a year. Fortunately, this situation was over. This was because the time was up and his body and primordial spirit had reached the limit at the same time, even with the help of the 5 clones and the eternal heart lamp. But after devouring a few tens and over 100 Tao insights, Fang Qingshan wasn't able to improve in the slightest any longer, and it seemed as if even the slightest bit more would be the straw that broke the camel's back. His entire person was numb, heavy, and muddled. This was the pressure of the will. Even his primordial spirit could not operate. However, if someone else looked at him, they would be able to see the endless way from his body. He was like a human-shaped treasure of heaven and earth, but this was coming out of his body. Looks like I've reached my limit. Fang Qingshan opened his eyes. Although he felt a little regretful, he was very satisfied, because he knew that the Tao insights he devoured now and over 10 other Taoist books were already sufficient for him to create the Divine Emperor section of the Tao corroboration technique. As long as he created the Divine Emperor chapter, he would be able to break through to the Divine Emperor realm. Even the peak of the Divine Emperor realm would not be far away for him. Furthermore, the timing was just right. He didn't waste any time or Tao insight points, nor did he feel that it was not enough. He didn't have enough time or Tao insight points. However, whether it was enough or not was only relative. If it was enough, it would be enough for him to comprehend the divine Emperor chapter. If it was not enough, it would be for his future cultivation. If he wanted to enter again, it would not be a short period of time, nor would it be so easy. You're pretty good. Right at this moment, a familiar voice resounded out, and it was the boy on the Tao Insight rankings. Everything that happened in the Tao Intent world couldn't escape his eyes. For someone like Fang Qingshan, who was so ruthless to himself, he was very impressed. After all, only those who were ruthless to themselves could be even more ruthless to others. Only then would they be able to go further. However, even though he admired Fang Qingshan, rules were rules. When the time was up, he naturally had to be thrown out. In an instant, an endless force swept towards Fang Qingshan. He didn't resist, as he knew that this was the force that belonged to the Tao Insight rankings. This time, it was time to expel him. However, at the next moment, something strange happened. He heard the surprised voice of the Tao Insight boy. The repulsive force stopped abruptly when it was about to touch Fang Qingshan. Not long after, it even retracted abruptly. What's going on? Fang Qingshan blinked his eyes, feeling a little confused. Fang Qingshan's astonishment didn't last for too long. An intoxicating voice that made one unable to help but have a good impression of it rang out. It was as if one wanted to worship it. Not bad. You're not bad. The light voice, which seemed to have a hint of a smile, suddenly sounded, but not abruptly. It seemed to come from all directions, as if it came from an immeasurable void, like a cool breeze blowing past. The voice was neither fast nor slow. It was light and carried a hint of a smile, as if it was an old father or a teacher who saw that his son had made a name for himself. Immediately, a ray of light shone. At first, the light was subtle, like a soft glimmer, but in the next moment, it became blazing. Like a star, it instantly burned and exploded, turning into a scorching sun, filling all directions and illuminating everything. Accompanying the extremely intense light was an unparalleled aura. This aura wasn't unfamiliar to Fang Qingshan, because it was the aura that belonged to venerable sovereigns. As soon as this light appeared, the entire Tao Insight world suddenly lost its color. All the Tao Insights lost their luster, and they all gathered in the direction where the voice came from. This was submission. Myriad Tao imperial purposes. Then, the light retracted, and a figure appeared in front of Fang Qingshan. It was a figure shrouded in a faint white light, looking a little blurry. Our Dowell school is honored to have a genius like you. The figure stared at Fang Qingshan, and there was a hint of a smile in his tone as he spoke to Fang Qingshan unhurriedly. His tone was full of praise. This sudden change stunned Fang Qingshan for a while, and then his heart trembled as if there was a storm sweeping in his heart. Just now, he had clearly sensed that the power of the Tao Will list was going to expel him, but it was interrupted by this voice. And to be able to appear here and do this, most importantly, to be able to appear in the myriad Tao imperial purposes, then the answer was very simple. There was only one explanation. This was the Tao will of the venerable sovereign great ancestor that he had been looking forward to the most in the beginning, but he hadn't discovered it at all after entering. However, he didn't expect that this Tao will didn't seem to be as simple as a trace of Tao will. It seemed to be in front of the venerable sovereign great ancestor, or rather, a clone. As soon as he thought of this, Fang Qingshan's heart suddenly sped up, completely out of control. It was in front of a venerable sovereign. The last time he faced a venerable sovereign was during the Tao Will School's inner disciple competition, when Pang Bo summoned the Fist Emperor's imprint in the river of time and space. The last time was when he listened to the Sword Emperor of the Storm's sermon at Fuyuan Mountain. It was just that they hadn't spoken to him alone. However, fighting with Pang Bo allowed him to break through to the peak of the immortal realm in the shortest time possible, and he even had a new understanding and breakthrough in controlling the myriad Tao with one. Listening to the Tao at Fuyuan Mountain allowed him to perfect the immortal chapter of the All Heavens Tao verification mantra. Only then did he break through to the late stage of the immortal realm, which was almost a major realm. Every time, he benefited a lot. Chapter 1560. In the boundless void, every venerable emperor was a legend. Meeting a venerable emperor was a great opportunity. Just observing a venerable emperor and feeling their aura would be very beneficial, not to mention the cultivation techniques, spiritual treasures, and Tao lectures. The last 2 times he had met a venerable emperor was different. This time, he had met the patriarch of the sect. Although he had died, and it wasn't his real body, Fang Qingshan still felt excited, as if he had hit the jackpot. After all, it was impossible for the venerable sovereign old ancestor to appear at this time just to take a look at him. Plus, he hadn't done anything wrong to the sect, so he was quite talented. Fang Qingshan could already predict what would happen next. An opportunity, a great opportunity, even greater than the Sword Emperor of the Storm's Tao lectures. It probably wouldn't be any weaker than the Eternal Blessing. Although the Sword Emperor of the Storm had faced the real body of a venerable emperor, he was only at the chaotic essence realm, so he didn't have any sense of existence. Besides, the Sword Emperor of the Storm had only talked about it as a routine. He wasn't related to the venerable emperor, so he didn't perform well. It was already a great fortune for him to be able to listen to the lecture. How could he ask for anything else? This time, however, it was different. It seems like you've already guessed my identity. Seeing that Fang Qingshan seemed a little excited, the phantom couldn't help but smile faintly, confirming Fang Qingshan's guess. How many years has it been? Everything seems like yesterday. Sigh. I've let the Dao sect down. The patriarch looked at Fang Qingshan and looked around, as if he could see the Dao mountain. His tone was full of emotion. That was right. He was the Dao sect's venerable emperor patriarch who had left the Dao list back then. He originally had 2 ideas. One was to build a Dao world to increase the Dao sect's foundation and a cultivation grotto heaven. Another idea was that a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows, so he left behind a life-saving method. After all, the great Dao was difficult. There were too many accidents on the path of cultivation. A little carelessness could lead to death. Even a venerable emperor was no exception. Natural and man-made disasters. Who knew when they would be struck by them? For the sake of being able to make a comeback and start anew, he left a portion of his innate Dao insight behind on the Dao insight rankings. It was just like a second clone or second primordial spirit of an ordinary person. In this way, if he encountered a calamity in the outside world, he could still use this Dao intent to start over. It was a good idea to prepare for a rainy day, but unfortunately, man proposes, God disposes. He had never thought that the danger zone would be so dangerous. Not only did it kill him, it didn't even give him a second chance. If it wasn't for the fact that this Dao intent was on the Dao intent list, and that it was isolated by the Dao intent sect's karmic luck C, it would probably have collapsed the moment he died. Now, even though his Dao insight was still present, his Dao true spirit was decreasing by the day, and it was being obliterated at every single moment. If it wasn't for the isolation of the merit and karmic luck Dao insight list, and if it wasn't for the nourishment of the enormous amount of Dao insights in the sea of Dao insight, it would probably have collapsed long ago. As for the emotion he felt earlier, it was because he knew that once he perished, the Dao sect would absolutely not have a good time. This was also the reason why he had manifested himself. One of the reasons why he appeared this time was that he was almost unable to persevere any longer. Even with the sea of karmic luck, the isolation of the Dao intent list, and the supply of various Dao insights, he was still weakening every minute and second. If he hadn't been in a deep sleep, he probably wouldn't have been able to persevere until now. Moreover, Fang Qingshan's talent had moved him, especially after he communicated with the Dao intent list and Daoist EE. He had decided to make one last contribution to the Dao sect. In fact, logically speaking, his opportunity should have been given to people like Yi Dao Xian, Jiang Overlord, and Pang Bo, or Daoist Yi, Zhugajin, and Xian Duo. As for the former, some of them were currently in seclusion. While some of them had great potential, they were still a notch lower than Fang Qingshan. After all, Fang Qingshan didn't just have talent. He also had the eternal heavenly vessel. As for the latter, their path of the Great Way had already been determined. Even if it was given to them, it would just be icing on the cake. Naturally, it was not as important as giving timely help to Fong Qing-shan. Then again, if the great ancestor's consciousness continued to sleep, he might be able to persevere for a while longer. But since he had been awakened and manifested himself, he could only make a long story short. Since you can enter this place at this time and alarm me, it means that you're a fated person. Cultivate well, and I hope that one day you can become the second Dizun of the Daoul sect and completely revitalize the Daoul sect. After saying that, without waiting for Fong Qingshan to respond, the great ancestor's body dispersed like fireworks, turning into mottled fluorescent light that spread out and covered Fong Qingshan completely. In the blink of an eye, Fong Qingshan's entire body once again turned into a big cocoon. For a moment, Fong Qingshan had no time to react at all. His entire body seemed to have been drugged, and he was dizzy as if he had returned to the time when he was a baby, and the big cocoon was like a placenta. An extremely comfortable feeling instantly surged into his heart, and Fong Qingshan's entire body was immersed in it. At this moment, in a place that he didn't feel, the injuries that had been almost healed due to the self-explosion and were waiting for the eternal blessing to heal were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Compared to the various top-notch heaven and earth treasures that the Daoul sect had consumed to repair his foundation, the effect was much better. It was even comparable to the eternal blessing. This was the power of a Dizun, extraordinary and incomparably mysterious. Moreover, not only did it repair his foundation, but it also helped Fong Qingshan refine his magic power, physical body, primordial spirit, law, real spirit, and all other aspects. It was equivalent to experiencing a comprehensive transformation. Although his cultivation did not break through, his potential was greater. Originally, Fong Qingshan had already reached a point where he could not make further progress. If it were not for the Timeless Arc and the Divine Emperor chapter of the All Heavens Way verification method, he would have already broken through to the Divine Emperor level. However, at this moment, he had room for improvement again. He had a strong foundation, his limit was broken, and his container was expanded. Naturally, it was a new world for him. However, this kind of thing could only be encountered by chance. After all, not everyone could get the help of a Dizun. Moreover, it was a help that consumed the power of origin. With this opportunity, Fong Qingshan's success rate of breaking through to the Dizun in the future would also increase by a little. In addition to using the power of origin to repair and improve Fong Qingshan's foundation, the big cocoon seemed to have turned into a black hole. For a time, the giant cocoon seemed to have turned into a black hole. Just like what Fong Qingshan had done before, it continued to devour the essence of the will of the great path from all directions and then poured it into Fong Qingshan's body. Light flowed and glowed with countless colors. It was constantly changing and full of unparalleled mystery. Chapter 1561. The great ancestor's actions were naturally extraordinary. In addition to using the power of the origin to repair and enhance Fong Qingshan's foundation, he also guided the Tao wills to compress and seal them in Fong Qingshan's primordial spirit like the eternal heart lamp. At the same time, countless pieces of information poured into his mind and were absorbed by Fong Qingshan. There was the Tao wills of the venerable emperor ancestor, as well as the essence of other Tao wills that were guided by the emperor-level Tao wills. The information was very complicated, containing all kinds of mysterious analysis, knowledge of the world, knowledge of the void of the universe, and most importantly, the great ancestor's experience of breaking through to Venerable Emperor. Although everyone's method of breaking through to Venerable Emperor was different and could not be copied, he could use other people's experience to improve himself. This kind of experience was even more precious than treasures like the 8-gem Ru-E umbrella. It could be regarded as the real foundation of a force. In the entire Daoul school, there were almost only a handful of people who could really get such an inheritance. Except for the sect leader, Only those who were about to break through to venerable emperor could get the inheritance. As for the others, even if they had Tao wills, they were not open to the public. At the moment, breaking through to venerable emperor was still a little far away for Fang Qingshan, and Fang Qingshan could not understand these experiences and profound meanings. But even if he did not understand, it was always better to keep it for a rainy day. There would always be a time when he could understand it and use it. What he was afraid of was that when he needed it, he would find that he knew nothing about it when he really broke through. This was the same as when he tried to devour as much Tao wills as possible. Regardless of whether he could understand it or not, this was an opportunity, and he naturally had to try his best to grasp it. The great ancestor did not want him to comprehend it now, but to let it settle in his body like a seal. When he reached a special point and his realm was high enough, it could turn into an indescribable treasure. In the end, an emperor-level Tao wills turned into a flowing light and flew into Fang Qingshan's mind, standing in his Naiwan palace like a pillar supporting the sky. In the next moment, Fang Qingshan's heart shuddered. He could feel his body, which had just been refined by the ancestor's quintessence, becoming even more refined and profound. His aura grew stronger like a mountain, like a prison. Although there was no qualitative breakthrough, it was imperceptibly strengthening bit by bit. Over the years, it was extremely terrifying. An emperor-level Tao insight was equivalent to installing a cultivation accelerator within Fang Qingshan's body, and it was able to increase Fang Qingshan's cultivation and comprehension of the Grand Tao by tenfold or hundredfold. The ancestral master saw that Fang Qingshan had an excellent aptitude and was likely to become a venerable sovereign, so he used the last bit of his soul sense to help him change his meridians and clean his marrow, polish his foundation, and restore his origin. At the same time, he taught him the way. However, the emperor-level will of the way could not be given to him in its entirety. After all, before the appearance of the second sovereign of the Tao Will School, this was still a one-of-a-kind item. It would be of great use to Taoist E and the others. However, although it could not be given to him in its entirety, he could share a little bit with Fang Qingshan. Although it was only a little bit, it would allow him to have an unprecedented intimacy with the law of the Grand Tao. When he comprehended it, success would follow naturally, like a fish in water. Most importantly, this item could also be used as a life-saving trump card, as it could withstand a full-powered attack from a venerable sovereign. In this way, the next time he encountered people like Chang Lushui or the Three Treasures Divine Emperor, Fang Qingshan would be able to easily turn defeat into victory. Even if he were to face an ordinary venerable sovereign, he would be able to escape with ease. He might even be able to catch a venerable sovereign off guard and make him suffer a great loss. What a lucky guy. I hope you don't let me down. When he saw the old man help Fang Qingshan recover his quintessence, help Fang Qingshan temper his foundation, help Fang Qingshan absorb many other Tao insights, and in the end, he even shared a strand of his own emperor-level Tao insight, the boy couldn't help but mutter to himself. As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Qingshan was completely thrown out of the Tao while ranking, and he returned to the internal affairs hall along the path he came from. Opportunity, a great opportunity. Haha, not only has the path of cultivation become much smoother, but my safety is also guaranteed. After leaving the internal affairs hall and returning to Samsara Star, Fang Qingshan could not calm down for a long time. Indeed, this trip to the Fallen Dragon's secret realm had almost killed him. The myth of the celestial chessboard had been destroyed, which made him very worried about his own safety. Now that he had the ancestor's trump card, Fang Qingshan could finally rest assured. Tao Will Sect, All Tao Peak. This was a weakened version of the Way world. Apart from the lack of emperor-level will of the Way, the Sea of Karma, and the Blessing of the Way list, which was a level 4 treasure, everything else was almost the same. The effect was also very good. Of course, this referred to people below the peak Divine Emperor level, especially those below the Divine Emperor level. Therefore, this was usually used as a retreat for those who were about to break through to the Divine Emperor level. In a secret room at the top of the mountain, Yi Daoxian was bathed in the Wei. He seemed to be asleep and awake. He did not have a thought, and the Wei followed his heart. A shocking wave of thunder flowed around him. Even the lightning on Fang Qingshan's thunderclap flag could not compare. Of course, the most important thing was that his life essence had transformed. Now, it was close to completion. If someone was beside him, they would clearly feel an unprecedented state. Although he seemed to be at the peak of a mortal realm, many who had just become divine emperors and even early divine emperors would feel the pressure. Obviously, he was about to break through. Time passed slowly. Perhaps it was a minute, a second, or a moment. Buzz. At a certain moment, Daoxuan's body hummed. His whole body was shining. Countless divine lights traveled through his body, and countless mysterious runes of the Wei flowed. It was as if one could see a supreme, heavenly pillar in his body. It stood between the heavens and the earth, piercing through the sun and the moon. It suppressed all things in the heavens. Moreover, an intoxicated expression appeared on his face. It was a feeling of great enlightenment and becoming a Buddha on the spot. At the same time, above the myriad Tao peak, there was a crack of thunder in the clear sky. Then, the clouds rose in the northwest, and the fog covered the southeast. Strong winds blew, and for a moment, a storm was brewing. Suddenly, one wisp, two wisps, one wisp, 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 two wisps. Endless dark clouds gathered together in an instant. The dark clouds pressed down on the city, threatening to destroy it. The heavens and the earth darkened, and the heavens and the earth became shorter. A formless pressure swept in all directions. Then dragons appeared. Tens of thousands of dragons galloped. The dragons could only see their heads, but not their tails, and their roars were deafening. These dragons were formed by lightning, but they were vivid and lifelike, as if they were real creatures. The dark clouds became thicker and thicker, and the pressure grew lower and lower. Thunder roared, and it was filled with a destructive power so dense that it was tangible. It also gave people a sense of righteousness and boundless creation. Violence, savagery, madness, destruction, judgment, dignity, justice, creation. For a moment, those who did not know would think that someone was undergoing a tribulation. Chapter 1562. The phenomenon on the myriad Tao peak was so huge that it naturally alarmed the people of the Tao sect who were already in a state of panic. They were stunned at first, but some of them reacted instantly and were naturally overjoyed. What a huge commotion! What a powerful aura! Could something have happened again? I don't think so. It seems like someone is undergoing a tribulation. No, this isn't a tribulation. Someone must have broken through. Breakthrough? How is that possible? These were the doubts of those who did not know the truth and were still in a daze. The myriad Tao peak. That kid Daoxian must have broken through. Most likely, that kid has finally broken through after training in seclusion for so long. Good. He broke through at the right time. Indeed, the Tao sect is blessed by the heavens. Although he suffered great losses previously, Daoxian has broken through now. This is like a shot in the arm. The others did not know what was going on and were still guessing. How could the higher-ups of the Tao sect not know that this was the eldest true disciple of the Tao sect, Yi Daoxian, who had broken through to the divine emperor realm? He cultivated the way of lightning. When he broke through, there would naturally be lightning. And looking at the signs of his breakthrough, he did not seem to be an ordinary new divine emperor. He was at least an early divine emperor or even a mid-divine emperor, and it was a titled one. Although this was normal, if he had broken through to an ordinary divine emperor, it might have been shocking. But at this moment, the higher-ups of the Tao sect were still wild with joy. After all, the Tao sect had just experienced the combined attack of the Eternal Heaven sect and many other forces. Although they returned without success, they still took the opportunity to kill the peak divine Emperor Chang Lushui, eliminate the traitor, and recover the losses. But the loss of disciples still made them feel heartache. It was not something that could be recovered in a short period of time. Not to mention other things, just this oppressive atmosphere was not so good. Although there was pressure to be motivation, it was not a solution to keep this tense all the time. Now, everything was fine. Daoxuan's breakthrough was like a timely rain. The next moment, the sun and moon appeared together. The galaxy competed with each other. A white rainbow pierced the sky, and a purple mist filled the world. Following that, the great magic conch was blown, and the great magic drum was struck. Immortal music was played. Heavenly flowers fell to the ground. Golden books and jade characters blossomed with boundless radiance. All of a sudden, the Merit Providence Sea that had appeared during the Tao Will Sex intersect competition appeared once again. This time, the Sea of Karmic Luck was even more turbulent, and the areas that had been damaged due to the loss of disciples were instantly repaired. Furthermore, there was a faint trend of it expanding outward, and the ethereal aura instantly solidified. It wasn't just the Sea of Merit Karmic Luck. The Tao Will ranking that had just expelled Feng Qingshan had appeared once again. However, at this moment, the artifact spirit shook his head and sighed. This is fate. What a pity. I was a step too late. He felt pity for Yi Daoxian. Before Feng Qingshan and Peng Bo, Yi Daoxian had been the eldest senior brother of all the disciples of the Tao Will sect. He was the true core disciple of the Tao Will sect and a candidate for the position of sect leader. Even Jiang Overlord could not compare to him. If he were to break through before Feng Qingshan entered the Tao Insight rankings, no. Even if he were to break through at the instant he woke up the ancestor, then the fortune that Feng Qingshan possessed would probably fall into his hands. Unfortunately, due to a combination of factors, he had missed it in the end. However, regarding this, the Tao Will child and Taoist, he could not say whether it was good or bad. It was good because Feng Qingshan had the timeless Arkansas. If the opportunity was given to him, his chances of breaking through to Sovereign Venerable Realm would be higher. It was bad because, after all, Feng Qingshan was not a disciple that had been nurtured since he was young, but had become a disciple halfway through. However, it was too late to say anything now. Could he start all over again? He's broken through. The news of Yi Daoxuan's breakthrough instantly spread throughout the Tao Will sect as if it had grown wings. Naturally, everyone who needed to know knew. Even Xinyuan Ziwei and the others who had been cultivating crazily in various secret realms received news. For a moment, everyone's expression was very complicated. There was pride, regret, envy, sadness, and all sorts of mixed feelings. The reason for this was that they were originally of the same generation and had once competed with Yi Daoxian. Unfortunately, he had surpassed them one day and they could no longer catch up. Now, Yi Daoxian had broken through to God Emperor. Although they were also at the peak of Immortal Peak and seemed to be just a step away from breaking through to God Emperor, this was clearly not an easy task. After all, Yi Daoxian had entered seclusion before Feng Qingshan had entered the Tao Will sect. He had only broken through now, and he had taken advantage of the timing. Even though they had been mentally prepared for Yi Daoxuan's breakthrough, when it really happened, they still did not feel good. Especially when they had just faced a life-and-death crisis and wanted revenge and power. However, on the whole, they were still happy. After all, they had long known that they could not compare to Yi Daoxian. Moreover, he had already been in seclusion for a long time. Breaking through now did not seem to be something unacceptable. At least, it was much easier to accept than when people like Feng Qingshan and Peng Bo had broken through before them. Moreover, everyone was in the same boat. They were bound together for good or bad. Although they did not seem to benefit from Yi Daoxuan's breakthrough, in fact, they were also benefiting from it. Especially under the current situation, Yi Daoxuan's breakthrough was very exciting. As the saying went, they were bound together for good or bad. Wasn't that right? Immediately, they received confirmation. In the instant that Yi Daoxian broke through, in another secret chamber in the Myriad Tao Peak, there was also a person who was working hard to break through to God Emperor. This person was none other than Jiang Overlord. However, compared to Yi Daoxian, Jiang Overlord seemed to be slightly inferior in terms of foundation and time spent in seclusion. Fortunately, because of his relationship with Jiang Mingyue, he had obtained a Windstorm Sword token and went to Fuyuan Mountain with Fang Qingshan to listen to an emperor's sermon. This gave him the possibility of catching up. However, even so, if Jiang Overlord wanted to break through, it was not something that could be done in a short period of time. However, following Yi Daoxuan's breakthrough, he seemed to have triggered something in the unseen world. Even Jiang Overlord seemed to have been stimulated by something. He felt his entire body tremble, and the dirt on his beard was swept away. A lightness that he had never felt before surged into his heart. It was as if he had become a Buddha on the spot and had achieved great enlightenment. Every inch of his skin was cheering in joy. Then, he felt the bottleneck between the immortal emperor and god emperor that had previously troubled him break apart like a broken dam. The originally tortoise-like metamorphosis instantly became visible to the naked eye. His physique, magic power, primordial spirit, laws, true spirit, Tao intent, and so on all had a qualitative leap. Divine light shone brightly, and a faint immortal aura, as if it had existed forever, emanated from his body. This was the aura that belonged to a god emperor. Chapter 1563. This is Jiang Overlord, who was originally in a state of half awake, half asleep, was struggling outside the door. He could only watch as his progress was as slow as a tortoise's. He did not know how long it would take for him to complete his transformation. This sudden change woke him up. The surprise came too suddenly. Even he did not understand what was going on. However, it did not matter if he did not understand what was going on. The opportunity to break through was right in front of him. It was a good thing anyway. Jiang Overlord only hesitated for a fraction of a second before he quickly immersed himself in his breakthrough. At the same time, before the crowd could wake up from the shock of Yi Daoxuan's breakthrough, they saw another change in the heavens and earth. The change this time was different from the lightning that appeared during Yi Daoxuan's breakthrough. This time it was a battlefield. On the battlefield, there was a goddess of war. She held a hammer in her hand. She was invincible, and undefeatable. However, a domineering will that could pierce through the heavens, and the earth suddenly erupted. Her battle intent was like a tidal wave. The battle intent in the goddess of war's eyes was almost uncontrollable. Even her war hammer was vibrating excitedly, as if she wanted to taste the blood of a strong enemy at any moment. However, after killing so many times on the battlefield, there was not a single trace of blood on the goddess of war's body. Her aura did not weaken at all. It was as if she would never know fatigue. The proud dragon regrets. The more she fought, the stronger she became. This time, the crowd did not have any doubts. They could tell at a glance that this was the domineering will that belonged to Jiang Overlord. This was because the goddess of war was obviously a replica of Jiang Overlord. In an instant, the celebration between the heavens and earth suddenly increased by 30%. The heavenly flowers and golden lotuses, which were originally in a profusion of petals, now fell down like a torrential downpour. The boundless purple aura dyed the entire Taoist chaotic world purple. Large swathes of auspicious light rose and stood tall like mountains. The heavens and earth roared in unison. Shadows of celestial birds and beasts appeared out of thin air. Some were walking, some were running, and some were flying. All the disciples, especially those with lower levels of cultivation, were more excited at this moment. To them, this was a sumptuous feast. That was because those falling heavenly flowers and golden lotuses weren't illusory, but actual good fortune. Although it wasn't too high a level, it was still a pretty good fortune for outer sect and inner sect disciples who were only at the primordial chaos and immortal realms. The more they devoured, the greater the benefits they would obtain. It wouldn't let them have a meteoric rise, but it could save them hundreds of years of cultivation time, and it wouldn't cause their foundation to be unstable. Could it be that the Overlord has also broken through? That should be the case. with such a domineering will of the way. Who else could it be but him? This is really double happiness. It's not just double happiness, it's triple happiness. After these disciples digest this fortune, they will definitely be able to make a breakthrough. Yes, yes. This time, our Tao school must open our doors wide and invite the entire world to celebrate. Look at how they suppress us. Our Tao school isn't something they can suppress just because they suppress us. Hee hee. The more they suppress us, the fiercer the rebound. I wonder what their expressions will be when they realize that they went for wool and came home shorn. If Yi Daoxuan's breakthrough was said to be a carded tonic that relieved everyone's pressure, then Jiang Overlord's breakthrough was the real surprise. They were prepared for Yi Daoxuan's breakthrough. After all, he had been in seclusion for so long. However, Jiang Overlord's breakthrough was really beyond their expectations. After all, he had not been in seclusion for long. They had thought that it would take at least 3 to 5 years, or even more, but they didn't expect the surprise to come so suddenly. Actually, Jiang Overlord's breakthrough was also thanks to Yi Daoxian and the Dao school. It was easy to understand why the Dao school was benefiting from it. Although the Dao school had suffered a great loss this time, it didn't hurt them deeply. Instead, it stimulated the Dao school's potential and caused the light of providence to flourish. This was also the reason why Yi Daoxian broke through at this time. Heaven and earth were on his side, and the light of providence favored him. In addition, he was already at the critical point, and with the push of providence, he was naturally successful. As for Jiang Overlord benefiting from Yi Daoxian, it was a little similar to how Sanqing became a saint in desolation. The light of providence was connected, and when Laozi broke through, it also stimulated the opportunity to break through together with primordial origin and Tongtian. It was the same situation for Jiang Overlord and Yi Daoxian. Both of them were among the best of the Dao school's true disciples. They were both the eldest true disciple and the second disciple, and they were both higher-ups nurtured by the sect and the reserve for the sect leader. More importantly, at this time of crisis, the light of providence erupted and affected the whole situation. It could be said that it was the right time, the right place, and the right people. Before the first wave subsided, another wave arose. Everyone in the myriad heavens and realms had yet to recover from the fact that the Dao school had been jointly plotted against, and that the peak divine emperors had fallen. Then they were told that the eldest true disciple and second disciple of the Dao school, Yi Daoxian and Jiang Overlord, had broken through to the divine emperor level in a short period of time, and they were not ordinary ones either. They had just entered the divine emperor level, and they were at least early divine emperors or even middle divine emperors. Well, it was fine if they didn't break through, but they broke through two at once. No matter how great the Dao school's losses were, once these two people broke through, everything would be resolved. Then, they received an invitation from the Dao school. Firstly, this was a tradition. After all, divine emperors could be considered as the mainstay of the myriad heavens and realms. Therefore, usually, every person who broke through to the divine emperor level would hold a banquet and invite various forces to celebrate together. Moreover, this was the best response the Dao school could give to the eternal ancient heaven sect and the others who had plotted against them. The rise of the Dao school was already inevitable, and it was not something that could be suppressed. On the contrary, just like those geniuses, tribulations would only help them grow. It's a pity that we've been working hard for others every year. The eternal ancient heaven sect, the Martial Pole sect, the Fire Phoenix dynasty, the Joshua Hall, the Evil Palace, the Bliss Mountain, and the other forces that had participated in the attack on the Dao school all smiled bitterly. Well, they had been the bad guys for nothing. At the same time, they knew that the rise of the Dao school was unstoppable. Although the Dao school seemed to be unaware of their existence, there was only a tacit understanding between the two sides. There was still a thorn in their side. Now, they had to consider how to ease their relationship with the Dao school. In fact, they were fine, but the truly unlucky ones were those forces that could not compare to the Dao school. They had thought that it was a deal that would only be profitable. After all, So many major forces had attacked together, but they did not expect that each of them had their own ulterior motives. In the end, they were the unlucky ones. Some had their sects destroyed, while others had to spend money to avoid disaster. On the contrary, the real mastermind was sitting on the fishing platform, and nothing happened. Chapter 1564. The real culprit was unharmed. No, the three treasures divine emperor had lost an 8-gem Ru-E umbrella. Apart from that, there were no other losses. Even so, the losses were so small that they could be ignored. Those in charge of being bystanders were caught in the crossfire. No, they were annihilated. However, this was a reality. Who told them to be weak? They were just chess pieces and not the players? The strong preyed on the weak. This was an irrefutable truth since ancient times. They could only blame those who wanted to take advantage of the weak. Their ambitions were higher than the sky, but their lives were thinner than paper. Just like becoming a dragon, there were risks. If the dragon failed, the flood dragon could not become a true dragon. It could be a dragon trapped in the abyss. However, there was only one ending for those who became a dragon. It was especially so now that the Tao Will sect had taken revenge on those small factions. Some of them had been annihilated, some had been extorted. The eternal ancient heaven sect and the other factions had turned a blind eye to it, as though they hadn't seen anything at all. Now, with the Daoxian and Jiang overlords' breakthroughs, they were planning how to ease their relationship with the Tao Will sect. After all, to them, there were no eternal enemies, only eternal benefits. Moreover, they were not enemies with the Tao Will sect because they did not suffer any losses. The Tao chaotic world, in front of the Heaven Dimension Gate, was bustling with activity once again. People from all walks of life appeared on the scene. All sorts of strange phenomena rose and fell one after another. Each was bigger than the last, as if they were competing in martial arts. No one was willing to be weaker than the other. All sorts of lights appeared and did not dissipate. They covered the sky and earth, pierced through the void, and appeared in front of the Heaven Dimension Gate. Among them, 9 dragons pulled a jade chariot across the sky. Dragon roars could be heard as a canopy covered the sky. A group of male and female attendants held incense sticks and cauldrons. Not long after, the sound of drums and flutes could be heard. The sun and moon accompanied them. The stars shone brightly. Flags fluttered, and feather canopies flew over. A tiger chariot, a jade chariot, and a feather chariot slowly arrived. In the next moment, the boundless void was lifted by an invisible hand. It was a place no weaker than a Tao chaos world. Someone had come from a distant Tao chaos world and directly opened a void passageway to the Tao chaos world. In an instant, boundless auspicious light and auspicious chi surged over from all directions, and they condensed into boundless auspicious clouds that held up countless golden lanterns and jade lamps, and they flowed in an endless stream like water dripping from the eaves. For a moment, guests flooded the place. Of course, those who made such a scene were usually the representatives of a major force. The leaders were all peak divine emperors, and they were also in charge of a certain area in their respective sections. They were either elders or protectors. Be it the Eternal Heaven sect, Martial Apex sect, Jiashur Hall, Evil Palace, Bliss Mountain, or the Ancient Thunder Palace, Spirit Realm, Iron Blood Empire, Mani sect, etc., who had a feud with the Tao Will sect, they were all here. These people were of noble birth and were used to mobilizing large forces. Moreover, it was for the sake of the sect's reputation, so it was naturally extravagant. Some rode on third-grade void battleships that sailed out to sea, majestic and impressive. Some rode on dragon and tiger carriages that were abnormally luxurious. All kinds of strategic treasures emerged one after another. The reason for this was actually the same as the Tao Will sect's idea. They all wanted to use non-combat methods to show off their extraordinariness and achieve the goal of intimidating the other party. If there were sects and powers, there would naturally be lone rangers. They would come alone, or they would turn into a streak of sword light and slaughter the world, or they would ride on a mount, their savagery overflowing into the heavens. Although they were alone, they were even more frightening. This was because although the Three Treasures Divine Emperor was a powerful force, he still had to consider the sect's disciples and think twice before doing anything. On the other hand, lone wolves were different. They would not easily provoke the disciples of large sects, but if they did, they would definitely be more ruthless. Fang Zheng was alone, so he had no worries. Killing one person would not be a problem, and killing two would be a gain. Therefore, the true rogue cultivator experts actually had a high status. For a moment, the place was filled with auspicious light and mysterious celestial music, emitting a solid tinkling sound. Astonishing pillars of light shot into the sky, shaking the world and reversing yin and yang. This time was different from the last interdisciple competition. During the intersect competition, although it was also a gathering of talents, young and old, and filled with distinguished guests, as long as one was on good terms with the Dao sect or had a certain level of strength, they could participate. This time, however, it was not only those with a certain level of strength who could participate, but also those with great strength. If one was a rogue cultivator, then one had to be a peak divine emperor. If one was a force, then one had to be at least as strong as the Dao sect. For example, the Thousand Autumn sect was not invited this time. Moreover, even if they were all from large sects, their leaders had to be peak divine emperors. Otherwise, even if the Dao sect did not let them in, would they dare to stand together with a group of peak divine emperors? One had to know that these peak divine emperors were not ordinary divine emperors like Chang Lu Shui. They were at least titled divine emperors and orange titles and above. Many of them were giants like Zhuge Jin, with high status and power. The level of the two could not be mentioned in the same breath. In the guest pavilion, at this moment, it was really full of distinguished guests, and they were all very valuable. This was because everyone here was a divine emperor, and most of them were peak divine emperors. Besides this time's protagonists, Daoxian and Jiang Overlord, the other forces that entered the guest pavilion were all peak divine emperors. Other than the peak divine emperors, the other disciples were also like them. They were the cornerstones of the sect. At this moment, Daoxian and Jiang Overlord sat in the seats of honor. This was because they were the protagonists today, so they sat above the group of peak divine emperors. However, the two of them looked at each other and smiled bitterly, as if they were sitting on pins and needles. Tables and chairs were placed on the left and right sides. On the right sat the people from ancient Thunder Palace who were on good terms with the Dao sect. Everyone was really happy for the Dao sect. On the left sat the people from the Eternal Heaven sect who had a grudge against the Dao sect. Although there was a gap between them and the Dao sect, it was not awkward at all. They were sincere, and those who did not know would think that they were on good terms. There was a table in front of each person. On the table was a stack of spirit fruits and a cup of spirit tea. Be it the spirit fruits or the spirit tea, they were the best of the third-grade cardinal treasures. The effects were very good, and they were even useful for peak divine emperors. Of course, the Dao sect did not take out such precious treasures to show off. Firstly, it was to save face. After all, the people who came were all peak divine emperors. If the treasures they took out were looked down upon, it would be a slap to the face. Secondly, it was to show their foundation. It was like a military parade to shock the other party. This was also the main purpose of this celebration. Of course, they did not lose out. After all, how could they not bleed when they came to participate in other people's celebration? Even the Eternal Heaven sect was no exception. The reason why they came this time was actually to ease their relationship with the Dao sect. Chapter 1565. They wanted to ease their relationship, but they happened to be holding a big celebration. How could they not bleed? If they casually took out something, it wouldn't be trying to ease their relationship. Instead, they were trying to shed all pretense of cordiality. Therefore, no matter how unwilling they were, they had to take out something precious. Otherwise, it would be the same as the Dao sect, not taking out anything good to receive guests. Not only would they be slapping others in the face, but they would also be slapping themselves in the face. Yi Daoxian and Jiang overlords' breakthroughs made them realize that the rise of the Dao Will sect was no longer something they could suppress unless they joined forces. However, they hadn't been able to do that before, let alone now. Moreover, the Dao Will sect wasn't completely powerless, and they weren't alone. Therefore, the Eternal Heaven sect and the others wanted to ease their relationship with the Dao Will sect. After all, even though the Dao Will sect seemed to ignore them and didn't do anything, it was obvious that they had a thorn in their hearts. It would be fine if they were greatly weakened. However, if they rose, it would be troublesome. Who knew if they were hiding in the dark like a poisonous snake, ready to give them a fatal blow at any time? Actually, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that everyone's thoughts weren't on the same page. This could be seen from the previous attack on the Dao Will sect. If it didn't go, but someone else did, it would be troublesome. It was like giving gifts to others. If you did, it would be easy for others to remember you. If everyone else gave gifts, but you didn't, it would be even more memorable. Therefore, even though the main characters this time were Yi Daoxian and Jiang Overlord, it was clear that they did not have much of a presence. After using their names to celebrate for a while, the two of them left. After exiting the guest pavilion, the two of them let out a long sigh of relief and looked at each other, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Then, together with the disciples from the other sects who felt the same, they turned and went to another place, the Dao Will market. It went without saying what kind of place the market was. It was a place specially built by the Dao Will sect's disciples to trade. It wasn't just the Dao Will sect. Many sects had places like this. Although the Dao Will sect had a treasure pavilion, it was only official and state-owned. On the other hand, the government was state-owned. Although the quality was guaranteed, it was clearly very inflexible. On the other hand, this was equivalent to a private enterprise. It was more flexible. Today, the Dao Will market was more than twice as bustling when compared to the past, and there was an endless stream of people and carriages. After all, there were a lot of sects and powers that had come this time around. The people that had come were all extraordinary as well. They were all elites from their respective sections. People like Jiang Shan and Zheng Xian were simply too weak and could not be brought out. If they were brought out, they would only be embarrassing themselves. Although they were still considered juniors in the eyes of the peak divine emperors, they were all experts who could take charge. Just like that, so many experts and peerless geniuses had gathered here. Every single one of them had unimaginable treasures in their hands. If anyone were to hold an auction at this time, they would be able to easily collect a large number of rare treasures. Unfortunately, holding an auction wasn't an easy task. Every aspect needed to be able to hold up, such as one's cultivation, one's connections, and the items to be auctioned. Therefore, even if Feng Qingshan wanted to take the opportunity to hold an auction in the timeless arc market, he had no choice but to give up regretfully in the end. However, he couldn't hold an auction alone. However, it was a good idea for the Dao Will sect to host the exchange. In fact, once such an exchange was held, it would be a good thing for both the Dao Will sect and the parties that came to celebrate. It was a win-win situation. With so many experts gathered together, everyone was wealthy. It was a rare opportunity for them to exchange what they needed, and they might encounter something that could greatly improve their cultivation. Although each of them had their own opportunities and backers, at their level of cultivation, it was honestly very slow to improve their cultivation by relying on hard work. Therefore, they rarely went into seclusion. Most of them were in various dangerous places, exploring secrets, or going to some large-scale auctions to collect things that were useful to them. Therefore, it was very appropriate for the Dao Will sect's exchange to be held at this time. At this moment, almost half of the Dao Will sect's true disciples, as well as the disciples of the various sects that came to celebrate, had entered. Naturally, Feng Qingshan was no exception. Moreover, he had a pillow when he dozed off. Even though he'd obtained Chang Lu Shui and Duan Wei's wealth, it was obvious that their spirit treasures didn't meet his requirements. It wasn't because of their quality, and it was instead because they didn't have any special characteristics. Feng Qingshan needed treasures like the Last Day's Eye, or at least the World Cauldron, or the Wishing Pool that could make up for the functions of the Timeless Ark, and allow him to become even more all-round. He'd originally intended to trade with his fellow disciples in private, and the opportunity had arrived now. As for why he didn't trade with the bountiful treasure pavilion, it was naturally because he would suffer a loss if he did that. Because the Tao sect wouldn't trade with others, and it would first convert one's treasures into Tao insight points before taking them back. After that, it would allow one to use the Tao insight points to purchase treasures that one took a fancy to. Even though this exchange wouldn't cause one to bully the customer, it was unavoidable that one would suffer a loss, and it would always be buying low and selling high. So, if there was an opportunity, then unless it was necessary, everyone would usually not trade in the bountiful treasure pavilion. This was the reason for the existence of the Tao sect. Not to mention all of this once one entered the Tao sect, because the things one traded in were extremely valuable, one had to personally watch over them. After all, no one was willing to hand over the treasures in their possession to the disciples of the Tao sect. After all, there was no lack of grade 3 premium grade treasures amongst them. However, if one were to personally watch over them, then one would be restricted to a single place, and it would delay one from looking around, searching, and purchasing treasures. So, for the sake of convenience, everyone that entered the Tao sect could first utilize the photographic mirror at the entrance, and it was like a video recorder to record a video before registering the things one wanted to trade or even the things one wanted to purchase. After that, one could enter the Tao sect. One could look for a place to set up a stall and wait for others to come. One could stroll around as well, and one didn't have to worry about being unable to sell the things one wanted unless there was really no one interested in them. Moreover, one didn't have to worry about being unable to buy the things one wanted to buy unless the price wasn't high enough or one was too unlucky and missed it. Because no matter if it was the treasures one registered for trade or the things one wanted to purchase, all of them would be displayed on a display screen at the center of the Tao sect. This way, everyone would be able to see it, and those who were interested would naturally contact and look for it and wait for one. This time, Fang Qingshan spent a lot of money to register all 13 treasures that had not been traded in the bountiful treasure pavilion, including the top-notch grade 3 treasure. As for what he wanted to get his hands on, it was naturally the eternal divine furnace unit. The grade requirement was not high, and it would be fine as long as it was grade 3 or even pinnacle grade 2. Chapter 1566. After all, the true grade of the Timeless Ark was only at the Supreme level. Generally speaking, the Supreme level Timeless Ark only needed to fuse with a grade 1 innate Supreme treasure. However, this was because Fang Qingshan's Timeless Ark had mutated a long time ago. After all, it was able to fight against peak immortal and even god emperors with the strength of a Supreme level. It had long surpassed the Supreme level and even many ordinary immortal Timeless Arkansas. If he fused a grade 1 Supreme treasure at this time, although he could rely on the Timeless Ark to increase its grade, it would not only slow down the speed of the Timeless Ark's advancement, but most importantly, it would also weaken the foundation of the Timeless Arkansas. This was something that Fang Qingshan did not want to see. How could an ordinary heavenly ship have so many empty slots every time it activated the eternal divine furnace? How could the eternal blessing have so much energy every time it activated? Therefore, when he was at the Supreme level, he fused a grade 2 or even a grade 3 Supreme treasure. In fact, if it wasn't for the fact that going too far was as bad as falling short, the Timeless Ark would not be able to withstand a Supreme treasure that was too powerful. Fang Qingshan might have already fused the 3 top-notch Supreme treasures that he had obtained from the Tao sect's secret vault. As for what would happen in the future if he fused a grade 3 Supreme treasure now, regarding this, Fang Qingshan could only say that there would always be a way when the car arrives at the mountain. Speaking of which, because of the mutation of the Timeless Ark, it was obviously not suitable to fuse a grade 1 Supreme treasure. However, although Fang Qingshan had fused the Lotus of Bliss and the Eye of Age, which were a grade 3 Spirit Root and a grade 3 Supreme treasure respectively, it was still possible for him to fuse a Supreme treasure of a grade like the Hibernation Pearl. It would not lower the foundation and standard of the timeless Arkansas. It was just that the lower the grade, the higher the requirements for the special attribute of the supreme treasure to be fused. It had to be a type that the timeless Ark did not have, and it had to be something that the timeless Ark did not have. After all, there were still 5 eternal divine furnace units left. Of course, on the other hand, it had to be like this. If it was a grade 3 supreme treasure, not to mention that there would not be that many of them, there were still 5 eternal divine furnace units left. Even if there were, very few people would take them out to exchange. After all, even though the number of level 3 treasures Feng Qingshan had taken out was huge, apart from the demon vanquishing sword, the rest were only ordinary treasures. Other than the eternal divine furnace unit, Feng Qingshan did not have any special requests for the rest. Be it top-notch spirit wine, supreme immortal pills, various potions, immortal herbs, spirit fruits, heaven and earth spirit items, Tao books, or mystic techniques, as long as it was useful to him, Mosquito Dowrin and the World Tree Clone, he would not reject them. As Feng Qingshan hung up his 13 level 3 treasures and used the photographic mirror to leave a mark, the surrounding air suddenly fell silent. It was so oppressive that it made it hard for one to breathe. Then, whether it was the people who were also waiting to hang up their treasures or the people in charge of recording them, even the onlookers in the surroundings, all gasped in unison. He could not help but let out a series of exclamations. 13 level 3 treasures. I'm afraid he must have robbed a force or obtained a top-notch cave abode. Yeah, let's not talk about those lower and middle level 3 treasures and even upper level 3 treasures. There's even a top-notch level 3 treasure. This, the demon vanquishing sword, a top-notch level 3 treasure with unparalleled attack power. It's something that many peak divine emperors can only dream of. Although there were many tycoons who took out more than 1 or 2 level 3 treasures in the past, there was no one like Feng Qingshan, who took out more than 10 of them at once. Not to mention the grades of these treasures. The highest grade previously was only a middle level 3 treasure, and it was even incomplete. However, not only did Feng Qingshan take out a complete upper level 3 treasure, he even had a top-notch level 3 treasure. Even some peak divine emperors would not be able to afford such a huge sum. It was no wonder that everyone was so shocked. What a huge sum. What a shocking foundation. He even took out a top-notch level 3 treasure to trade. Who was this person? Feng Qingshan, the champion of the Tao Yi sect's inter-disciple competition. So it's him. I heard that because of this person, Chang Lu Shui, a peak divine emperor from the Thousand Autumns sect, died in the hands of Zhuvijin from the Tao Yi sect. Is that so? Then it seems that this treasure is Chang Lu Shui and the Thousand Autumns sect's special treasure. Fortunately, the people from the Thousand Autumns sect did not come. Otherwise, I wonder how they would feel now. Feel what? A life for a life, a debt for a debt. That's all. After recovering from their initial shock at the top-notch level 3 treasures, everyone was suddenly very interested in the person who took out these treasures. On one hand, they were shocked by Feng Qingshan's generosity. On the other hand, they could not understand why he would take out such a treasure to trade. Could it be that he did not fancy it, or that he had more in his hands? For a long time, everyone could not calm down. Feng Qingshan was not a nobody. Not to mention his previous fight with Pang Bo, just the fact that a peak divine emperor like Chang Lu Shui died because of him was enough to make him famous. Therefore, people quickly recognized him. However, Feng Qingshan did not care about this at all. As the saying goes, if you don't sacrifice your child, you won't be able to catch the wolf. If Feng Qingshan wanted to obtain the treasures that he desired, then he had to go all out. Otherwise, how would he be able to obtain all sorts of precious treasures from others? Moreover, it was just as some people had guessed. These treasures were not bad indeed, but they were only not bad. It wasn't to the extent of not taking a fancy to them. However, to Feng Qingshan, they were just some resources. Since they were resources, they were naturally things that could be traded. They were not things that were indispensable like the eye of the last days. Even though it was said that one's wealth should not be exposed, but one's wealth would become a crime. However, this was the Tao Will sect, and his safety was guaranteed. If something were to happen to him here, then it would be equivalent to giving the Tao will sect a slap in the face, and it would probably be even more severe than plotting against all those disciples. Moreover, even if someone wanted to rob him, they would have to see if they could escape from the Tao will sect after the robbery. As for exposing his wealth and being robbed when he left the sect, that was a different matter altogether. Perhaps Fang Qingshan was very willing for such a situation to occur. After all, at that time, it was still unknown who would be the one who would be robbed. Moreover, even though the devil-vanquishing sword was very shocking in the eyes of the disciples who were participating in the exchange meeting, it was nothing special in the eyes of the divine emperors who were truly powerful enough to pose a threat to him. Otherwise, Zhuge Jin would not have given up on this treasure. Most importantly, he was not a rootless duckweed. He had the Tao will of the ancestor of Dizun. Unless it was a Dizun or a half-step Dizun like Taoist Yi or Elder Tan, they would not be a threat to him. Most importantly, after today, he would obtain the treasures that he wanted, and he would immediately be able to advance to the timeless arc, and then his cultivation base would break through as well. Once he broke through both, with his divine emperor cultivation base, he would be able to control the immortal timeless Arkansas. Apart from top-level divine emperors, he would probably really have nothing to fear. Chapter 1567. A brilliant feat. Fang Qingshan's goal was achieved. Things developed as Fang Qingshan had expected. He took out 13 treasures in one go, including a pinnacle level 3 treasure. It was like dropping an atomic bomb on the plains. The entire trading fair and even the entire Tao will sect was shocked. Of course, the higher-ups were only surprised for a while and did not take it to heart. After all, the devil-vanquishing sword was just an ordinary pinnacle level 3 treasure. It would be great if they could get it, but it did not matter if they could not. However, they still sent a message to their disciples to try and buy it. As for those upper divine emperors and even ordinary peak divine emperors, most of them were tempted. A pinnacle level 3 treasure was something that many peak divine emperors were not prepared for. For ordinary divine emperors, obtaining one would immediately increase their combat power by a level. It was not impossible for a late divine emperor to defeat a peak divine emperor. There were many peak divine emperors like Wu Yu and Zhuge Jin in the Tao will sect, and there was no shortage of ordinary peak divine emperors. There was no lack of pinnacle level 3 treasures in the secret vault. However, one would have to make a great contribution to enter it. Just the amount of Tao meaning points needed to exchange for one was enough to deter them. Therefore, many ordinary peak divine emperors did not have pinnacle level 3 treasures. When they heard Fang Qingshan take out the devil-vanquishing sword to exchange, they were very tempted. Fang Taoist, I am the true disciple of Bliss Mountain, Gu Jianshu. This is what I want to trade. Do you want to take a look? Fang Qingshan had just finished registering the 13 treasures when Gu Jianshu, who had not gone far, turned around and opened his palm. Like a mirror, he displayed the various treasures he wanted to trade. In fact, this was just a projection of the mirror. He allowed Fang Qingshan to take a good look at the various treasures, and then he introduced the grades and effects of these treasures one by one. He seemed to be very enthusiastic, and it was obvious that he was very interested in the treasures in Fang Qingshan's hands. Of course, it was not only Gu Jianshu who had such thoughts. Everyone else in the registration office also rushed up. Some of them were inquiring about what kind of treasure Fang Qingshan wanted, some were recommending their own treasures, and some were testing the patriarch. In this regard, Fang Qingshan didn't put on any arrogant and cold attitude. Instead, he smiled and chatted with everyone. Although he wasn't interested in most of the things here, and even if there were 1 or 2 things that he was interested in, he wasn't in a hurry to open his mouth. Firstly, when it came to trading, the person who spoke first would lose the initiative and would lose. Secondly, they wanted to see if there was anything more suitable and compare goods. Therefore, after a brief exchange, the crowd dispersed. Even though everyone felt regretful about this, they could understand it. After all, if they were in his shoes, it would be impossible for them to make such a decision so quickly. However, Those who really wanted to exchange for the treasures in Fang Qingshan's hands began to move secretly, thinking about the requirements Fang Qingshan had mentioned before, and whether they had something similar in their hands. Some of them even began to think about their backers, namely their peak stage divine emperor masters and uncle masters who had brought them here. In this regard, Fang Qingshan didn't care about it all. In fact, he was happy to see it happen. After all, the more people were interested in the treasures in his hands, the more space he had to choose. Moreover, with more people, he could also raise the price and maximize his profits. After entering the market, in addition to the central area, there were also the virtual images of the treasures being traded. Naturally, the various stalls were also indispensable. Compared to the images on the mirrors, the items on the stalls were all physical objects that could be used and traded directly. Generally speaking, the treasures on the mirrors were more valuable. After all, if they were just ordinary treasures, it would be embarrassing to leave them on the mirrors. Of course, this didn't mean that there were no good things on the stalls. They were just relatively few in number. However, there were more opportunities to pick up scraps. Nevertheless, such good things could only be encountered by chance. Fang Qingshan walked along the way and looked around. From time to time, he would stop at a stall and ask questions. Although he already knew that the trade fair this time was not simple, he only realized that it was even worse when he actually looked at it. He didn't know if it was because the people who came were all disciples of big sects and were rich, but the people from the Tao sect couldn't lose face. Therefore, the items that they took out were naturally of high quality. This was also because Fang Qingshan took out 13 level 3 treasures in one go, and there were even top-notch level 3 treasures. Or perhaps there were other reasons. At this moment, the quality of the various treasures that appeared at the trade fair was really not low at all. In fact, many of the smaller auctions couldn't be compared to this. Although the value of the items varied, they were generally above the middle-high grade. Even if there were some low-grade level 2 treasures, they all had special effects. Even if they were unpopular, they would still have extraordinary effects on special occasions. For example, the space-time nail in Zhuge Jin's hands was always successful in dealing with the space-time Tao. Most of them were similar to the level 3 top-notch treasures that Jiang Shan and Zheng Xian had in the hands of the Tao sect's inter-disciple competition previously. Of course, although most of them were level 2 treasures, there were also many level 3 treasures. Although they weren't as rich as Fang Qingshan, or rather, they knew how to hide their wealth, there were still many stalls that could take out level 3 treasures, and there was one every few distance between them. Of course, the level 3 treasures that they could take out for trading were all low-grade level 3 treasures, and many of them were damaged. Apart from level 3 treasures, there were also many unique treasures, books, and treasures of heaven and earth that were of very high quality. In terms of quality, some of them were not inferior to completed spiritual treasures, and some were even better. Fang Qingshan looked around as he walked, but he didn't make any trades. First of all, he didn't actually lack spiritual treasures, but he lacked special spiritual treasures and even cultivation resources. Other than things with special effects, he didn't lack anything else. Along the way, he did see many good things, but there wasn't anything that he was determined to get at first glance. Therefore, Fang Qingshan planned to walk around first. He wasn't in a hurry, and he would look at most of the things before making a move. He believed that with the level 3 high-grade and top-notch treasures that he took out, he would definitely be able to get what he wanted, and he would be able to sit on the fence. Hey, don't miss out on this. Fight big with small. A small gamble is fun, and a big gamble makes one rich. Come, let's take a look. At this moment, Fang Qingshan suddenly heard a shout. He followed the sound and saw that it was already surrounded by a circle of people, and the atmosphere was very lively. Chapter 1568. What's this? Fang Qingshan found the scene in front of him very refreshing. This kind of shouting was not uncommon in the mortal world, but it was rarely heard in the cultivation world. Walking up to take a look, he realized that it was stone gambling. Fang Qingshan was no stranger to gambling on stones. Whether it was in the mortal world or the world of cultivation, it was not uncommon. The only difference was that in the mortal world, they gambled on jade, while in the world of cultivation, they gambled on all sorts of strange treasures. However, there was one thing that was very similar, and that was that people would go crazy for them. Some people would become rich overnight because of it, while others would lose everything. One could go to heaven, and one could go to hell. This was not a joke. Although it was very risky, it was like the attraction of opium to drug addicts. No one could get rid of it. From emperors, divine emperors, giants of a region, to immortal origin immortals, and even ordinary lone cultivators, everyone was willing to gamble. The only difference was whether they could control it or not. Some people even used stone gambling to cultivate in order to hone their minds. Walking into the crowd, he saw a fat man piled in the middle like a mountain of meat. His eyes were slightly narrowed, and there was a glimmer of light in them from time to time. He looked like an unscrupulous businessman, but he did not seem annoying. Instead, when he smiled, there was a sense of closeness. At the moment, he was shouting with his mouth full of saliva, trying to get the crowd to be generous. There were 3 treasure basins in front of him, a gold basin, a silver basin, and an iron basin. But whether it was gold, silver, or iron, they were all precious treasures above the second level. Although the 3 basins were very small, there was a world inside them. The stones piled up like mountains, and every stone was like a dazzling treasure, exuding a strong sense of temptation. These stones were none other than the void stones. They were the stones that everyone scrambled to obtain and gambled madly. The so-called void stone, in essence, was not a stone. They were a special power in the void called treasure mud. Treasure mud had no offensive or defensive power. Compared to other treasures of heaven and earth, it could not be used for cultivation or to refine weapons or elixirs. Even as an earth attribute treasure of heaven and earth, it could not be used to plant spiritual roots or spiritual medicines. If that was the case, this thing was of little value, tasteless, and a pity to throw away. But this thing had a very special effect. It was somewhat similar to the treasure basins, and could attract wealth and treasures. The difference was that the treasure basin's effect was to gather, and it constantly attracted treasures to it. But the treasure mud was different. It seemed to have a special nose for smelling things. It would appear wherever there were treasures. Normally, all of these treasures would be born of the void, or if someone had died and their storage space had exploded, or for some other reason. When those treasures were floating around in the void, they would easily attract those energies. Once those treasures were discovered, the myriad treasures paste would wrap them up. Those treasures were strange as well. If someone were to take them away, they would most likely resist. However, when faced with the myriad treasures paste, they would take the initiative to cooperate. The reason for this was that after wrapping them up, it could maintain the treasure's spirituality. One should know that many treasures, if not properly stored, would lose their spirituality after a long time. This was similar to the effect of time stop. But that was not all. After wrapping them up, it could also repair the damage of the treasure. Although the effect was not good and it was very slow, it was already very good. The treasure wrapped up by the treasure mud was the so-called void stone. Of course, the void stone here referred to the real thing. Just like how a phoenix would not land in a land without treasures, any treasure that could catch the treasure mud's attention was not ordinary. The treasure mud would not care about treasures like innate spiritual treasures at all, so would not wrap them up. It could be imagined that the things that could be wrapped up by the treasure mud were at least level 1 treasures, and the highest level 4 treasures were not rare. As for what kind of incredible treasures, or even supreme, celestial treasures they were, it really depended on one's luck. This was because even venerable sovereigns could not see the void stone formed by the treasure mud. Moreover, since the formation of the infinite void in the universe, there had not been any secret techniques, or magic powers that could be used to peek into the treasure mud. The word gamble itself explained the risks involved, and stone gambling was something that one would lose 9 out of 10 times. It was not difficult to understand why stone gambling in the mortal world would have this kind of situation. However, the void stone was a treasure, so why would such a situation occur? This was very puzzling. In fact, this was another matter, because the Real Voidstone was naturally a treasure, but stone gambling was not about whether there was treasure in the stone, but whether one could choose the Voidstone among the many stones. As the saying went, if there was no trade, there would be no killing. Since there was a market, there would be profiteers, so there would be counterfeits. These people naturally made a lot of Voidstones for their own profits. However, stone gambling was the same as antiques. It really depended on one's eyesight. If one bought a fake one could only blame it on one's bad luck. Moreover, not only could there be man-made counterfeits, but there were also natural counterfeits. Generally speaking, natural deities would have accompanying spiritual treasures, and all kinds of top heaven and earth treasures would also have accompanying spiritual items. The treasure mud was no exception. It also had an accompanying spiritual item called the blindfold mud. The so-called blindfold mud, as its name suggested, actually had the effect of deceiving everyone and stealing the sun. This accompanying spiritual item was almost the same as the treasure mud, and the difference was so subtle that it was difficult to distinguish. Even a real powerful expert would not be able to distinguish it with all kinds of magical powers and eye techniques. The most important thing was that as an accompanying spiritual item, the blindfold mud was dozens of times more numerous than the treasure mud. Every time a real Voidstone was formed, dozens or even hundreds of fake Voidstones would be formed. Therefore, 9 out of 10 gambles were lost. As for the fat man, those who could come to the Tao sect today were all people with powerful backgrounds. He was Jin Bushu, the descendant of the Jin family, one of the 3 major stone gambling families in the void. He had come with his family's great ancestor, Jin Sherwang. The 3 basins in front of him were also special products of the stone gambling family. The ones in the iron basins were obviously of the lowest quality, but their prices were relatively low. The ones in the silver basins were of relatively good quality, so their prices were naturally relatively higher. The ones in the gold basins were carefully selected by the disciples of the Jin family. They had the highest probability of containing treasures, so their prices were naturally the most expensive. Of course, they could not be generalized. The gold basins could contain trash, but the iron basins could also contain treasures. After all, even venerable sovereigns could not distinguish them, let alone them. The Jin family was just relying on their rich experience. Interesting. Upon seeing this, Fang Qingshan could not help but feel a little interested. Chapter 1569. Although everyone knew that gambling wasn't good and that 9 out of 10 gambles lost, everyone was still very interested in it. Every time there was a stone gambling den, it would be very lively. Some people enjoyed the pleasure of the unknown, some just wanted to satisfy their cravings, some really wanted to get rich, some wanted to hone their temperament, and some, on the other hand, Fang Qingshan was no exception. He wasn't thinking of getting rich overnight or obtaining some grade 4 utmost treasure or spirit object to soar into the sky. Moreover, he wasn't thinking of tempering his heart. Instead, he was purely interested in having a taste. However, what made him feel strange was that although the surrounding people were slightly restless and obviously wanted to gamble, there were very few people who entered the treasure basin to choose the gambling stones. After all, this was the stall of the Jin clan, one of the 3 major stone gambling clans in Boundless Void. Logically speaking, these people should be even crazier. After all, the probability of buying a real item from the Jin clan was much higher than anywhere else. Naturally, the probability of getting a treasure was the same. However, this doubt only lasted until he was ready to give it a try. Then, he finally found out why. Does this Taoist also want to try his luck? You're right to come to my stall. Who knows, you might get a treasure today. Jin Bushu squinted his eyes and sized up Fang Qingshan. His pupils suddenly widened. Although they weren't that big, his entire body was filled with joy as he greeted Fang Qingshan enthusiastically. Jin Bushu had obviously recognized Fang Qingshan. As a successful businessman, it was essential to recognize people. He could tell who was a potential customer at a glance. Previously, Fang Qingshan had taken out 13 treasures at the entrance of the market, including a peak level 3 treasure like the Demon Vanquishing Sword. This news had already spread throughout the Dao sect, so naturally, it couldn't escape Jin Bushu's ears. It was fine if he didn't meet such a tycoon, but now that he did, how could he let him go? He naturally had to do everything he could to promote his goods. I wonder if you want to try the stone gambling stone in the iron basin, the silver basin, or the gold basin. Of course, I suggest you choose the golden basin. The gambling stones here are all carefully selected by me. I even got the void stones for my patriarch. There's a very high chance that they'll contain precious treasures. In the past, the unparalleled Battle Emperor obtained the level 4 supreme treasure, the unparalleled halberd, from my ancestor's golden bowl. In addition, the Jiunin Divine Emperor obtained an Emperor's Stone from my second ancestor's golden bowl, which allowed him to break through to the half-step Emperor realm in one fell swoop. It laid a solid foundation for him to break through to the venerable Emperor realm in the future. Also, the Great Dream Emperor obtained the Heavenly Dream Imperial Scripture from my third ancestor, and the Immeasurable Longevity Buddha of the Holy Buddha Clan obtained the Buddhist sect's supreme treasure, the Myriad Buddha's Pilgrimage painting, from my fourth ancestor. Before Fang Qingshan could say anything, the moment he showed a trace of interest, Jin Bushu started to promote his products. Even Lotus Blossoming Tongue couldn't describe his sales ability. Compared to him, Junti's guidance paled in comparison. Even Fang Qingshan was fascinated by Jin Bushu's words. Fang Qingshan knew about the unparalleled halberd. Even among all the venerable Emperor Realm supreme treasures, it could be regarded as a fine treasure. At least, compared to the Martial Pinnacle Sect's Emperor Slayer Saber, this halberd was obviously superior. When the unparalleled Battle Emperor obtained this weapon, he was able to defeat the Fist Emperor, who was a Middle Emperor Realm Martial Emperor, with his early Emperor Realm cultivation base. As for the Emperor Stone, Fang Qingshan was even more tempted. The so-called Emperor Stone was a supreme treasure condensed from the essence of an Emperor-level expert after his death. It had the same effect as the bottleneck-breaking pill. A top-peak Divine Emperor would have a great chance to break through to the venerable Emperor realm after taking it. Of course, generally speaking, this method of using external objects to break through is not advisable, because there is a great possibility that one could only do this from then on. However, people still flock to it like a flock of ducks, especially for those peak Divine Emperors who had no hope of breaking through to the venerable Emperor realm. It was better to stay at the early Emperor realm forever than to stay at the peak Divine Emperor realm forever. Although a peak Divine Emperor was also a big shot, compared to a venerable Emperor, they were not even qualified to carry his shoes. Just by thinking about the Dao school with a venerable sovereign ancestor and the Dao school without a venerable sovereign ancestor, one could easily see the whole picture. Moreover, this kind of disadvantage was not inevitable. Emperor Jiu Nan was an example. He did not use the Emperor Stone to break through, not because he could not, but because he forcibly suppressed this kind of breakthrough. He only used this treasure to comprehend the process of breaking through, to strengthen his foundation, and finally broke through to the venerable Emperor realm on his own. Therefore, the Emperor Stone was coveted by peak Divine Emperors who were still committed to breaking through to a higher and further great way, like Zhuge Jin and Sanbao Divine Emperor, or by people like Chang Lu Shui, who had a promising future but had exhausted his potential. In fact, the Dao sect also had an Emperor Stone. After all, the great ancestor had died in the sect. In the past, many forces besieged the Dao sect mainly because of the Emperor Stone. Unfortunately, the truth was that there was no Emperor Stone. The great ancestor did not leave behind the Emperor Stone at all. No one knew what had happened in that dangerous place. Not only had the venerable emperor died, but even the Emperor Stone had not been left behind. Even the life-saving trump card that he had left behind was useless. It was because of this news, coupled with the desperate fight of Old Tan and the others, that these people retreated. Otherwise, the Dao sect would not have been able to survive until today. Even if it had survived, it would have suffered heavy losses like the other forces and gradually disappeared from the sovereign list. Of course, it was also possible that Old Tan and the others had used the Emperor's Stone to break through to the venerable Emperor realm in advance to maintain the situation. However, all of this was hypothetical. Who knew? It was impossible that it had never happened before. As for the Great Dream Emperor's Emperor-level cultivation technique, Heavenly Dream Emperor Scripture, it was a genuine cultivation technique nurtured by the heavens and the earth. It wasn't like Feng Qingshan's All Heavens Tao verification technique, which required one to comprehend and comprehend by oneself. It was said that this Heavenly Dream Emperor Scripture was a peerless, divine cultivation method that could lead one to the peak of Venerable Emperor. It was originally the condensation of all the dreams and illusions in this world. It was invisible, intangible, and had no source. Unless there were no dreams and illusions in this world, and everyone's mind was as calm as still water, no one could eliminate its existence completely. However, this was impossible. In the past, in order to obtain this cultivation method, many venerable emperors who cultivated great dream, illusory spells, and even venerable emperors who had nothing to do with illusory spells had all tried to snatch it. After all, ordinary emperor-level cultivation methods were created by venerable emperors bit by bit. Unless one was lucky or extremely talented, the grade of the cultivation method would be the grade of one's cultivation. The Heavenly Dream Emperor Scripture was something that could be cultivated directly to the peak of Venerable Emperor. How could people not covet it? Chapter 1570. As for the Buddha clan's infinite life Buddha's supreme treasure, the 10,000 Buddhas worshipping painting, it was also extraordinary. The power of this treasure was actually quite ordinary. It was much weaker than the unparalleled halberd of the unparalleled Battle Emperor. However, this treasure was a little different from other treasures. It was similar to the people's umbrella that Jiang Shan had. Though it was just an ordinary level 4 supreme treasure, it was an important treasure for the country. The stronger the dynasty and the more people there were, the stronger the power of the people's umbrella would be. The 10,000 Buddhas worshipping painting was the same. The Buddhas weren't ordinary Buddhas. They were Buddhist emperors like the Infinite Life Buddha and the Six Desires Buddha. With each additional Buddha, the power of the 10,000 Buddhas worshipping painting would increase. If they could really accumulate 10,000 Buddha emperors, this treasure could transform into a level 5 supreme treasure. It could even break through the boundless void and return to the primordial world. However, this was a distant dream. It was impossible, because the boundless void didn't even have 10,000 Buddha emperors, let alone 10,000 Buddha emperors. Even so, this treasure still became the most important treasure of the sacred Buddha tribe. In addition to the unparalleled halberd, the Emperor's Stone, the Heavenly Dream Imperial Scripture, the 10,000 Buddhas worshipping painting, and other level 4 supreme treasures, there were countless level 3 and level 2 treasures. Jin Bushu spoke of all the well-known treasures one after another. Because of these treasures, people became famous all over the world. When Jin Bushu spoke of these treasures, people's hearts raced. However, though Feng Qingshan was excited, he didn't let it affect his mind. Because he knew Jin Bushu's words could only be trusted a little. It wasn't that he was lying. What he said was indeed the truth, but it was a good truth. He only mentioned that he had found all kinds of treasures, and that the popularity of these treasures had soared. However, he did not reveal any of the situations where he had lost his fortune because he had gambled on stones and failed to find any treasures. Feng Qingshan had learned about it from an anecdote in the Great Doctrine Palace. It was said that there was a venerable sovereign who liked to gamble on stones, but his luck was so bad that he lost 9 out of 10 times. However, he just couldn't stop. Because of stone gambling, he, a venerable sovereign, was heavily in debt, which could be considered a miracle in the whole universe. After all, one slice of heaven and one slice of hell was no joke. Even venerable sovereigns could not afford to lose for years. Fortunately, Unlike ordinary people who would die if they went bankrupt, it was different for cultivators, especially for venerable sovereigns. Even if they were heavily in debt, they could still live well. Putting everything else aside, just the favor of a venerable sovereign was enough to make up for everything. Zhou Yu and Huang Gai. One was willing to be beaten, the other was willing to be beaten. This stone gambling emperor loved to gamble. Even though he was in debt, he didn't give up. The Jin family, in order to cater to this venerable sovereign, or in other words, to exchange the void stones for his friendship, they provided him with free supplies. Since then, they have been mutually beneficial. The Jin family provided the void stones to the venerable sovereign, and the venerable sovereign became the Jin family's guardian, protecting the Jin family. Although this situation was a bit shameful for a venerable emperor, the venerable emperor might be more than happy to see this happen. He really liked stone gambling too much. Putting that aside, Fang Qingshan wasn't fooled by Jin Bushu's words. Instead, he asked first, "Then how much is a void stone worth?" Hearing this, Jin Bushu's eyes widened again. He looked like a normal person again. He was overjoyed. The others looked at Fang Qingshan as if he was a fool. What? Seeing this, Fang Qingshan immediately felt very strange. But soon after, he understood the reason, and he almost vomited a mouthful of blood. It's not expensive. You can choose one level 3 treasure. Jin Bushu rubbed his hands together with a smile. Fang Qingshan's face froze. He looked at Jin Bushu in a daze, as if to say, "Are you serious?" Of course, Jin Bushu nodded without any hesitation. He boasted shamelessly and said shamelessly, "Don't worry, Fang Daoist. Although the price is cheap, the quality of the void stones is guaranteed." Fang Qingshan laughed expressionlessly and continued to ask, "What about the silver and iron basins?" One void stone for the silver basin costs a peak level 2 spirit treasure. The iron basin is even cheaper. It only costs a middle level 2 spirit treasure. Jin Bushu said with a smile. Fang Qingshan's expression did not change, but he was cursing Jin Bushu in his heart. He was wondering why there were so many people here. They looked at him as if he was a fool when he asked for the price. It turned out that they all thought of him as a sucker. Good heavens! Even the cheapest iron basin could only be chosen from a level 2 middle grade supreme treasure. Normally, the chance of getting one from the iron basin was only 1 in 1,000. Furthermore, other than those who were extremely lucky and managed to obtain grade 3 or 4 treasures, the best one could obtain was only grade 2 high grade. Most of the treasures were only grade 2 medium grade or below. Although the chance of getting a silver basin was slightly higher, it was only 1 in 500, while the gold basin was 1 in 200. Just like the iron basin, the best one could get from a silver basin was early level 3. Most of the treasures were peak level 2 or middle level 2. This was even more so for the golden basin. Apart from the fact that the void stone had a higher chance of appearing, there were also special cases like the unparalleled battle emperor and the Amateus Buddha. The best treasure that could be obtained from the golden basin was only upper rank 3. Most of the treasures were early rank 3 or below. No wonder you lose 9 out of 10 times in stone gambling. It's true. Fang Qingshan murmured to himself. With the price, even if the success rate was increased by 10 times, he would still lose 9 out of 10 times. Just when Fang Qingshan heard the price and was hesitating like everyone else, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly, some of the people who had chosen the void stone had already broken it. I'm screwed. What a pity. Almost. A middle level 2 spirit treasure. 1 slice to heaven and 1 slice to hell. Luckily, it's only an iron basin. If it was a silver basin or a gold plate, I would have vomited blood. Amidst these sounds of regret, rejoicing, and even schadenfreude, there was suddenly a cry of surprise. A treasure is out. A treasure is out. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone turned to look at him simultaneously. The appearance of a treasure was shocking. All of a sudden, the sky darkened, and an invisible pressure descended from the sky. The air in all directions tightened. Fortunately, this power wasn't too strong. It was unknown whether it was because no one was controlling it and it was just a strange phenomenon, or because everyone here was at least at the immortal realm. Chapter 1571. Initially, they had heard news of failure one after another. Coupled with the fact that the Void Stone was so expensive this time, everyone was already hesitant and ready to give up. Unexpectedly, at this time, someone opened up a good item. Moreover, it was not just one item. Looking up, they saw that the Void Stone had been broken. A beam of light shot up into the sky and turned into a square seal in midair. It fell from above. The seal was like a dragon, and the bottom was flat. There were no words on it. However, as it fell straight down, it was as brilliant as heaven's might. The seal expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. It became the size of a mountain and was very powerful. It was like the Emperor's seal that was about to issue a decree of the three realms. Compared to it, the flipping sky seal seemed to be worlds apart. However, people with a discerning eye knew that this was not a spirit treasure, but a magical power. Yes, there were all kinds of things that could be obtained from the Void Stone. There were spirit treasures, magical powers, secret techniques, creatures, Taoist books, natural treasures, spirit pills, and miraculous medicines. As long as one could think of it, there was nothing that could not be obtained. At present, the Void Stone was obviously a magical power. Although it was not a spirit treasure, it was already very good. Judging from its power, it should be at the immortal level. Not only could it be used for cultivation, but it could also be sold. Its value was at least higher than the previous medium level 2 treasures. For the people who gambled on the Void Stone, it was not a loss. Instead, they made a small profit. In addition to the magical power, there were 2 other people who got treasures. One of them, after the Void Stone was broken, a green light shot up into the sky. A wave of creation power suddenly burst out. At first, everyone thought it was a creation power, a healing pill, or a spirit fruit. Later, they did not expect it to be a seed. They were very disappointed. However, after the Void Stone was broken, this seed actually quickly sprouted. It was unknown whether it was because it had been wrapped in the treasure mud for too long and could not wait, or it was originally like this, or perhaps there were other reasons. 2 beams of light intertwined, one blue and one red. The blue was like water, and the red was like fire. There were bursts of dragon roars and phoenix cries, and a strong fragrance. If it was just a seed, no one would be able to tell. However, after seeing this scene, how could they not recognize it? They all cried out in surprise. This item was called the Dragon and Phoenix Bringing Prosperity Tree. It was an extremely rare spiritual root of heaven and earth. It required a dragon and a phoenix, and they had to be in love with each other. When they were alive, they would sing together, and when they died, they would be buried in the same cave. After that, they would go through a series of changes and finally condense into a seed. If it was any other spirit root, it would take 3,000 years for it to bloom, 3,000 years for it to bear fruit, and 3,000 years for it to mature. However, the Dragon Phoenix Bringing Prosperity Tree was different. It was like a short-lived flower that could grow from a seed to a fully mature spirit fruit in a short period of time. The Dragon Phoenix fruit it bore contained incredible medicinal properties. After consuming it, it would be especially beneficial to the body. Moreover, not only could it be eaten directly, but it could also be used as the main ingredient to refine a 9-step emperor pellet. As the name suggested, it was a first-class pellet that could help people break through to the God Emperor realm. It was very attractive to many peak of immortal realm experts, just like the Emperor Stone to most of the peak of God Emperor realm experts. Most importantly, it was a top-grade 3 pellet, the auxiliary ingredient of the Eternal Emperor pellet. Thus, although it was just a grade 2 spirit root, many grade 3 spirit roots couldn't be compared to it. Especially to the big forces, it was the foundation of their foundation. Taoist, I wonder if you are willing to part with it. I will give you an early grade 3 treasure. Just an early grade 3 treasure, and you want to buy the Dragon Phoenix Bringing Prosperity Tree? In your dreams, I will give you 3 treasures. In just a blink of an eye, the onlookers all wanted to buy it. Guys, don't fight for it. I won't sell it. Unfortunately, there weren't many independent cultivators here today, and the one who had the dragon phoenix bringing prosperity tree was also a disciple of a big sect. Thus, he wouldn't sell something that could strengthen the sect's foundation. Sigh, what a pity. Even though the crowd had already expected this, they still couldn't help but sigh. This is really good stuff. Even Fong Qingshan couldn't help but exclaim after seeing it. His eyes flickered with excitement. This was a lot better than ordinary treasures. After all, spirit roots were treasures that could be regenerated. After using it, there would always be a new one. Besides, the spirit root was extremely useful for immortal realm cultivators, godly emperor realm cultivators, and even godly emperor realm cultivators who were trying to break through to the immortal realm. It was just like how one's rank was low, but its effects were not bad. In addition to that, there was another person who had managed to get a grade 3 treasure. He had managed to get a grade 3 treasure from the Iron Basin. One must admit that he was quite lucky. Not only was Jin Bushu not displeased, he was even happier than the person who had managed to get the treasure. This item was similar to Fong Qingshan's thunderclap flag. It was even a war flag. However, the thunderclap flag was of the lightning element, while this item was of the destruction element. The flagpole glowed with a black light. As the flag unfurled, fine patterns interweaved with each other. The gray light was similar to the destructive river that had appeared in the fallen dragon mysterious realm. A strong wind blew, causing the wind to flutter. Destruction, sacrifice, revenge, and battle. They were all hot-blooded and crazy, as if they were possessed. Rumble. The flag unfurled. It was as if a jar of hot oil had been poured into a raging fire. Endless white flames burned fiercely, devouring the sky and earth, as if they were going to turn everything into the netherworld. Seeing the treasures coming out one after another, especially the dragon phoenix bringing prosperity tree and the destructive war flag. Because of the high price, the crowd that had been prepared to give up immediately felt like they had been injected with chicken blood. In the business of stone gambling, luck was very important. If a place frequently failed, it would be a taboo for stone gamblers. However, if there was a treasure, it would be considered a good omen. With these prerequisites, it seemed to have stimulated the excitement in everyone's hearts, and they were all generous. Of course, most of them were going for the Iron Basin. After all, they were still rational. Even so, Jin Bushu still made a lot of money. That was why he was even happier than the owner of the Iron Basin when he saw a grade 3 treasure, even though it seemed like he had suffered a loss. He wasn't making the same amount of money. He was making a lot of money with a small profit. Even Fong Qingshan was no exception. Even though he was cursing Jin Bushu in his heart, he still walked into the Iron Basin with his actions. Many people entered the basin at the same time. Almost all the onlookers joined in. Even though they knew the secret method might not work, they didn't give up. They used all kinds of methods. Chapter 1572. The void stone formed from the treasure paste that was wrapped around the precious treasures was slightly special. It was unknown if it was because of its own uniqueness, or if it was because of the grand Tao laws within the boundless void. In any case, since the world had been split open, regardless of whether it was imperial venerables, chaotic origins, secret techniques, divine abilities, spirit treasures, or anything else. So long as the void stone hadn't been broken open, then no one would be able to clearly determine what was within it. However, it was precisely because of this that the business of stone gambling wouldn't exist at all. Even though everyone knew that these secret techniques and divine abilities weren't very effective, practically every single one of them had utilized them at this moment. Someone's eyes shot out the sun and moon, seemingly able to penetrate through everything. Someone closed his eyes. His primordial spirit and spirit force enveloped the void stone, quietly comprehending it as though they could seep into it. Someone took out a treasured mirror that seemed to be able to reflect the great Kiliacosm. Someone picked up a hammer and started hammering it, listening attentively, as though they were listening to a sound, of course, The reason they'd acted in this way wasn't because they felt that direct secret techniques and spirit treasures would be very useful, and they merely sought comfort in their hearts. Moreover, they'd utilize these spirit treasures and secret techniques mostly because they wanted to get a clearer view of the void stones. After that, they wanted to determine if they were real void stones by observing their appearance, weight, sounds, and various other aspects. For a time, it was like everyone was displaying their respective abilities. In any case, Fang Qingshan saw no less than a few dozen investigative secret techniques and divine abilities, and all sorts of spirit treasures emerged in an endless stream. He couldn't help but feel as if his horizons had been broadened. However, all of them were like Granny Lu who'd entered the Grandview Garden. They looked left and right, and they frequently picked up void stones to take a look before examining the void stones by their sides. Of course, not to mention second brother. Everyone was the same. Fang Qingshan was naturally no exception. He withdrew an eye as well, and it was the last day's eye that he'd just obtained. Not only did it possess the last day's divine ability, it also possessed the abilities of ordinary spirit treasures, such as detection. Moreover, its detection ability wasn't weak. At the very least, it could be ranked in the top 5 amongst the secret techniques and divine abilities possessed by everyone here. Right, the Eye of the Last Days was a mid-rank rank 3 precious treasure, and it was even comparable to a high-rank or top-rank treasure. Although this effect was largely due to the Dharma-ending Great Divine Ability, his Detection Divine Ability was comparable to an ordinary level 3 medial grade Divine Ability. As for the others, their treasures were only of this grade at most. Everyone was filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. Since Jin Bushu recognized Fang Qingshan, the others naturally recognized him as well. It was precisely because of this that he felt even more displeased. Earlier on, he had already taken out 13 treasures, and now he actually took out another one so casually. Was he really not afraid of being robbed? Fang Qingshan did not mind at all, not to mention the fact that he was about to break through. Even if he still had his current cultivation, he would be lucky not to rob them. In fact, he was hoping that these people would lose their minds and attack him. That way, he would have a reason to fight back. Then, a windfall would fall from the sky. It would be another bonus. After he broke through, he would be their patriarch, a peak divine emperor, so what? At least, he was completely unafraid of people like Chang Lushui. Even if he couldn't defeat someone like the 3 treasures divine emperor, he could still run away. If he was forced into a corner, he might even be able to counterattack by utilizing a strand of venerable Emperor Dao insight. Putting all of this aside, even though the Eye of the Last Days was profound, its true effect was still the Dharma-ending Great Divine Ability, and its detection ability was only ordinary. Therefore, the Eye of the Last Days couldn't penetrate the Void Stone at all. In the end, it would obviously be a waste of effort. Fang Qingshan had expected this. If it was so easy, then there wouldn't be such a thing as losing 9 out of 10 in the stone gambling industry. Alas, what a pity. However, even if he knew this, Fang Qingshan still felt slightly regretful when it really happened. After all, it was a grade 2 treasure. Even though he had taken out 13 grade 3 treasures in one go, it was still something, wasn't it? He was also stimulated by his previous curiosity and the treasures that he had just obtained. He thought that if he could obtain a few good treasures, he might be able to gather all the eternal divine furnace units without having to trade those treasures. If he was lucky, it might even be possible for him to obtain some top-notch grade 3 eternal divine furnace units for the next immortal level timeless Arkansas. Unfortunately, while his thoughts were beautiful, reality was cruel. Looks like there's only one last way. A shrewd light flashed in Fang Qingshan's eyes. He dared to enter this place to gamble on stones not because he was stupid or bold, but because he had something to rely on. And what he relied on was the eternal mind lamp. Although it seemed like none of the venerables, immemorial origin realm, spiritual treasures, or secret techniques could detect the void stones, Fang Qingshan had a guess. These were all products of the infinite void and the myriad realms. Hence, They were limited by the laws here and could not do this. However, the eternal mind lamp was a product of the primordial origin. Moreover, the everlasting lotus was the absolute overlord of the primordial origin. Hence, the secret technique comprehended from such a treasure might have some effect. He did it as soon as he thought of it. However, the eternal mind lamp was different from the myriad realms. In order not to attract attention, Fang Qingshan did not take out the eternal mind lamp. Instead, he only visualized it in his sea of consciousness. First, it was the great path of the green lotus diagram. Currently, the great path of the green lotus diagram had already reached the 33rd grade, which was comparable to some middle to late grade 3 secret techniques. Suddenly, it shrunk in the middle. Then a bright lamp slowly rose. It was still the same lotus lamp. It looked more focused and mysterious than the last time. The eternal aura was stronger, and the green lotus Taoist rhymes were more abundant. The reason for this was actually very normal. As the saying went, combat was the best teacher. Even the improvement of one's cultivation was inseparable from combat, let alone these divine powers and secret techniques. Only by constantly using them, making up for the flaws, and perfecting them bit by bit could they become more exquisite. However, a green halo that looked like an eternal blessing spread out. However, it was tightly locked within Fang Qingshan's body. Not even the slightest bit leaked out. Although the people nearby felt that Fang Qingshan's aura seemed to have changed, they only took a quick glance at him and then ignored him. At this moment, everyone was immersed in investigating the void stones without any distractions. The lotus seed in the center of the mind lamp seemed to have become more solid. If one did not pay attention, they would think that it was the eternal lotus seed. It was sparkling like jade and emitted an ancient Taoist rhyme. It transmitted endless spirituality and an eternal aura. It was as if this lotus seed represented eternity, immortality, and supremacy. Chapter 1573. Whoosh! The bones in Fang Qingshan's body trembled, and a series of crackling sounds could be heard. Following that, there was a sound that sounded like the rolling of a great river. It was the sound of his bone marrow fluctuating. Then, as the eternal heart lamp spun, the bone marrow in Fang Qingshan's spine was like silk being spun from a cocoon. Wisps of faint but crystal-like eternal divine marrow were extracted. For a moment, Fang Qingshan shuddered. That kind of pain was not something an ordinary person could bear. It was more painful than being cut into pieces. Moreover, this was the spinal cord and the eternal divine marrow at that. Extracting it directly would not only affect Fang Qingshan's current condition, but it would also damage his foundation. Fortunately, a drop of eternal divine marrow could burn for a long time, and using the eternal heart lamp once did not require much eternal divine marrow. Of course, the most important thing was that every time the timeless arc advanced, Fang Qingshan would be able to accumulate some eternal divine marrow under the eternal blessing. Now, Fang Qingshan's more than 200 bones contained some eternal divine marrow. The reason why he extracted it from his spine was because it was the purest and the most abundant. Extracting a little bit did not matter. But strands of crystal clear holy light, like eternal blessings, slowly gathered and condensed into green spiritual beads that were full of spirituality, creation, and an indescribable Tao rhyme. It seemed to be the same as the wick and the lotus seed, and drops of lamp oil that looked like glazed crystals were rippling. There was a lamp holder, a wick, and now there was lamp oil. Fang Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. Thump, thump, thump. His heartbeat was like a thunderclap. Boom! In an instant, it was as if the sky and earth were collapsing. An extreme surge of qi and blood, true meaning, and will burst forth from his heart. In an instant, the air was shattered, the vacuum distorted, and fine ripples spread out. Fortunately, it was circulating inside Fang Qingshan's body, and his physique was strong, not any weaker than a level 3 spirit treasure. Furthermore, he could control his own power as if it was his own arm. Otherwise, it would cause a huge commotion in the outside world. Chi, chi, chi. Sparks were ignited. Once, twice, 1 point, 2 points, a single spark can start a prairie fire. At a certain moment, all of the sparks converged together. With a boom, they turned into a beam of fiery light. Hua! The wick was lit, and the oil turned into origin energy that was constantly being burned. A burst of gentle light began to shine. The light was gentle, but not dazzling. Moreover, the brightness was extremely high. When placed in the dark and gloomy boundless void, it could shine as brightly as the sun in the sky. Amidst the light, one could vaguely see a supreme green lotus blooming. Surrounding it were various lotuses that surpassed the 30th grade. Streams of purple gas gathered to form clouds. It was divine and extraordinary. The light flickered, and the green light shone down. Wherever it covered, the light naturally gathered together. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a huge lotus character in Feng Qingshan's palm. As soon as this word appeared, it was like a supreme grand Tao. No matter if it was space-time, fate, karma, or reincarnation, all of them had to stand aside and submit to it. As it spun, it released endless, eternal, holy light. Through this word, it was as if he had seen the everlasting lotus himself. It was as if he had arrived at the origin of the primordial world. Supreme, eternal, and indestructible. Feng Qingshan controlled a lotus character. Every time it came into contact with the void stone, the lotus in his palm would light up with a faint green light. Obviously, Feng Qingshan wanted to use the eternal power to test whether he could break the shackles of the law of the boundless void and break the shackles of the void stone so that he could directly see inside. Because he was afraid of making too much noise and attracting attention. After all, a man's wealth was his own ruin. If Feng Qingshan could see inside the void stone, once the news was leaked, it would be disastrous. After all, the real void stone was a supreme treasure, one that even venerable sovereigns coveted. Once people found out, the best result would be being kept in captivity. If it was worse, the Dao school might not be able to protect him, let alone the Dao school. Therefore, Feng Qingshan was very careful when using it. Fortunately, after the Dao school's inner sanctum competition, especially after the battle in the Fallen Dragon's secret realm, everyone now knew that he was the master of the Timeless Arkansas. Although the Timeless Arc was only at the Supreme Master level, it could be said that it had mutated and was invincible among its peers. The eternal aura on its body couldn't be more ordinary. Therefore, when Feng Qingshan used the eternal mind lamp technique, everyone thought that it was the same as other people's divine powers, secret methods, and spiritual treasures. They thought that it was just an ordinary probing method to observe the void stone more clearly. As for the possibility that Feng Qingshan could see inside the void stone, no one had thought about it. This was something that no one had thought in this direction. Even if Feng Qingshan were to say it out loud, no one would believe him. Instead, they would think that he was speaking nonsense and was arrogant. After all, the void stone couldn't be peeped. This was the conclusion of countless venerable sovereigns since the boundless void had been formed. No one paid attention to it. So Feng Qingshan felt more at ease and began to probe it one by one. Every time Feng Qingshan's hand touched the void stone, there would be a flash of green light. Once it left the void stone, the green light would disappear without a trace. Even those who were close to Feng Qingshan couldn't see the mystery behind it. However, Feng Qingshan had put on a good show. Although he was mostly using the power of the eternal mind lamp to probe the real situation inside the void stone, he didn't make a judgment so easily. Instead, he picked up a primordial stone from time to time and scrutinized it carefully, as if he was acting based on his experience. As Feng Qingshan placed his hand on the void stone and the eternal blue light swept past, Feng Qingshan's body suddenly shook. Although it was very slight, so slight that no one except him noticed it, and it disappeared in an instant, Feng Qingshan's heart felt as if a huge wave had been set off in a calm sea. Good. It's really possible. Then am I rich? For a moment, Thousands of thoughts flashed through Fong Qingshan's mind. If it wasn't for his good temperament and firm willpower, he would have already revealed a flaw, although no one would have thought that he had a secret method to probe. As he obtained more and more treasures, the truth could not be concealed. One day, it would be discovered. Moreover, even if it was just a clue, some people would rather kill 1,000 people than let one person go. Wasn't this the case with the previous encirclement? It was precisely because they saw that the Dao sect had hope of rising that they joined forces to suppress it, wanting to wipe out its hope in the cradle. Putting all of this aside, this was really a pleasant surprise. Fong Qingshan was actually not sure if the Eternal Heart Lamp would be useful or not. He was just holding on to the mentality of making a Hail Mary attempt and displaying this mystique. It would naturally be best if it was useful, but it would not matter even if it was useless. Chapter 1574. A flower planted intentionally would not bloom, but a willow planted unintentionally would grow. Fong Qingshan was just like the others who had used all kinds of probing secret techniques. He had originally wanted to give it a try. He hadn't expected that he would accidentally be able to do something that others couldn't. In the end, he had actually managed to detect some of the situation in the Void Stone. This also indirectly confirmed one of Fong Qingshan's conjectures. The reason why the Void Stone couldn't be probed was probably because of the laws of the entire boundless void and the universe. Therefore, regardless of whether it was venerable sovereigns, origin immemorial beings, spiritual treasures, or magic powers, none of them could be probed. This was because they were still in the boundless void and hadn't transcended. Since they were still in this circle, they naturally had to abide by the laws here. Unless they broke through to the 5th level one day, or at least could stand on equal footing with the great ways of the universe and stand on equal footing with them. At that time, it would probably be possible for them to break through the shackles. Compared to other magic powers, although the Eternal Heart Lamp was comprehended by Fong Qingshan himself, in terms of grade, it was probably about the same grade as the Eye of the Last Days. Logically speaking, other secret techniques and magic powers couldn't achieve this, and it was the same for him. However, although the Eternal Heart Lamp was comprehended by Fong Qingshan, it wasn't a product of the universe after all. Moreover, the most important thing was that Fong Qingshan had comprehended it through the Everlasting Lotus. The Everlasting Lotus was known throughout the universe and the boundless void. It had truly transcended and far surpassed the 4th level, and it was a divine item that had existed since ancient times. From the time the boundless void and the universe had formed, and from the time this divine item had been known, the Everlasting Lotus had existed. There were many masters of the timeless arc in the boundless void, and some of them had long reached the eternal level, comparable to the peak venerable sovereigns. However, when they faced the Everlasting Lotus, there was no change at all compared to when they first faced the Ling Yun class timeless Arkansas. They were still so small, and they couldn't see the slightest hint of the Everlasting Lotus. It was still so supreme. Even in the land of primordial origins, the Everlasting Lotus would be an unimaginable giant, just like Yu Desolation in Hongjun. Moreover, he was definitely an existence that surpassed Class 5. Otherwise, even if he was stronger than the owner of the Eternal Heavenly Ark, it was impossible for them to not be able to find out about his strength. After all, they were still able to render the masters of the Eternal Heavenly Vessel unable to resist at all, even though they were so far away. This clearly showed how formidable they were. It was precisely because of this that Fong Qingshan borrowed a wisp of his charm, which was why it was so miraculous. It was the same principle that he could almost run amok among divine emperors with a wisp of the great ancestor of the Dao sect. Some people might ask, if Fong Qingshan could do it, why couldn't the other masters of the timeless arc? After all, he wasn't the only one. As mentioned before, Fong Qingshan wasn't the only one who had obtained the eternal lotus seed since the creation of the myriad worlds. There were also many masters of the timeless Arkansas. Among these people, there were many masters of the immortal realm, the ancient realm, and even the eternal realm of the timeless ark, let alone the supremes. Especially the eternal realm masters of the timeless ark, whose strength had broken through to the venerable sovereign realm. If they couldn't do it, why could Feng Qingshan? The reason was that the most important thing in Feng Qingshan's eternal heart lamp was not the eternal divine marrow, the eternal lotus seed, or the great path green lotus diagram, but the eternal way rhyme that belonged to the everlasting lotus. Yes, the true effect was that wisp of the eternal lotus unique aura. Of course, the other great path green lotus diagram, the eternal lotus seed, and the eternal divine marrow also had an effect. They complemented each other, but the charm was the most important. With the charm, other things acted as catalysts, allowing him to blossom to the fullest. The reason why Feng Qingshan was able to obtain a wisp of the eternal green lotus charm was because he had personally observed it on more than one occasion. He had even traveled to the primordial world and come into close contact with the eternal green lotus. Moreover, because he had mutated many times, he had obtained the eternal green lotus praise, and this was the glory that belonged solely to him. As for the other masters of the timeless ark, Feng Qingshan did not dare to say that he did not have this opportunity. After all, the world was vast, and there were many strange things. Opportunities and blessings were not common in the world. While Feng Qingshan monopolized most of them, there were others who also had better opportunities. But even if there was, it was possible that it had not been developed. They were used to gambling on stones. After all, since ancient times, no one had ever used a secret technique to do this. They subconsciously thought that no matter what, it could not be done, so naturally they would not try. It was also possible that they did not have the hobby of gambling on stones, or that they had developed it. But like Feng Qingshan, they quietly made a fortune and never revealed it. But no matter which one it was, it had nothing to do with Feng Qingshan. At this moment, his mind was filled with how to use this secret technique to harvest the void stones and open all kinds of treasures. Spiritual treasures, Tao books, magical powers, secret techniques, treasures of heaven and earth. Feng Qingshan seemed to have fallen into an illusion, and all kinds of treasures seemed to appear at his fingertips. Originally, he had been worried about the advancement of the timeless Arkansas. After all, it was only at the supreme level, and he had integrated a medium level 3 treasure. He was ready to integrate a peak level 3 treasure into the immortal level, so he needed at least an early level 4 treasure for the ancient level. As for the eternal level, he needed at least a medium level 4 treasure. In the entire Tao, sect, there were only 2 known level 4 treasures, and they were both early level 4 treasures. Even if they were hidden, there was only one. Moreover, level 4 treasures were different from others. Even if you wanted to buy them, no one would sell them. After all, some venerable sovereigns still used peak level 3 treasures. Moreover, level 4 treasures could be used as venerable sovereigns and could become the strongest trump card of a force. It was also a symbol of a force's heritage. After the death of the great ancestor of the Tao, sect, the reason it could still survive was because of these level 4 treasures. In the past, Elder Tan had retreated from the enemy and risked his life because he had level 4 treasures and had unparalleled combat power. Now that he could spy on the real void stones, Feng Qingshan did not lack level 4 treasures. Unparalleled Battle Emperor and Amateus Buddha were his role models. Fortunately, although Feng Qingshan was extremely excited, he did not reveal any of it on the surface. Otherwise, if he was too excited, nothing would happen to him now. However, once he opened up a lot of supreme treasures, it would immediately attract the attention of others. If they followed the clues and found the melon, this small flaw would be magnified infinitely. Perhaps everyone would know that there was a problem. Putting all this aside, after Feng Qingshan's initial excitement, he discovered a new problem. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.